Hello. Hello, 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 hello. Hello, it's me, 1,000,000. I'm back. We're doing it again today. You know, the politics thing. How have you been? How's it going? How's everyone been? I'm just here looking at some clips, trying to get myself ready. You know, the good stuff. Oh, we've got a lot to talk about today. It's been hell of a week. And possibly the wildest one. Chasing that clout. Yeah, that's what it is. Chasing that clout. That's what the title is.
Banks are bracing.
Ooh. Let's see, what is this? Oh, yeah, I like that. Save that. Yeah, so, it's been fun. It's been a good time, I guess. I've had a good week, although I can't say the same for everybody.
With the latest on the
Apparently there are some places that have some really, really rough weeks this week, which is exactly what we're going to talk about. That is probably not the right way to talk about that. I should not say that they had a rough week. They had hell on earth. So we're going to talk about that for a little bit.
Today,
we're also going to talk about Russia v.
It's the most
Japan. I know. Wild. But yeah, things are wild. Things are wild this week. Let's see. So, first off, we should get to the big news. Big news being, of course, that... What's this? No, it's about being the cloud. You gotta allow it to take over you. I gotta just be cloud. Everything, cloud. Me, cloud. Cloud. Here, cloud there. Cloud. So yeah, the big news. What was the big news? Right. I wrote it in the title. I should know this. What was it? Right. It was this. Ta-da! George Santos was charged in 2017 with stealing puppies from Amish dog breeders. Yeah. This is supposed to be a joke, but honestly, this is true, actually. George Santos was, again, screwed over. Because that's just what happens to George Santos. Like, the guy can't catch a break. Oh, man. Anyways, they have, the House Democrats have officially decided to take action, I guess, is what you would call it. Let's see if we can find this. They decided to pass something. Yep, here it is. Let's see.
Most people
Hold on, let me make sure you guys can hear this. Yep. Okay. All right.
who have spent their entire careers as congressional reporters have never had a reason to ask a question like this.
Representative Garcia is going to be introducing a resolution to expel you from Congress this afternoon. Do you have any comment on that?
That's his prerogative.
There have been 12,506 members of the House of Representatives in its 234-year history.
Like, what do you mean?
5 of them have been expelled by the House of Representatives.
Wait, you're saying that in the entire history of the House, only 5 representatives have ever been expelled? Oh my God. Yeah, no, there's a whole bunch of shit going on right now about Santos.
3 of those 5
were
expelled for participation in the civil.
Like, again, this is not a partisan thing, I think. I think this is a bipartisan thing where we can all just agree that this guy's a fucking liar and he's just hilarious. If you don't count, the Civil War where they left on their own. We didn't kick them out. They left. They just walked out. Shyamalan probably didn't get kicked out. But almost all of them just left.
Civil War fighting against the United States of America.
Let's see what happened.
There really have been only 2 members of the House of Representatives who were expelled for something other than waging war against the United States.
Hey, what do you know? You mentioned it. So, all right. So 3 got kicked out for the Civil War. 2 got kicked out for, I don't know. Maybe this. No, probably not this. This is. I feel like this is brand new. I don't know.
George Anthony DeVolder Santos is moving at astonishingly high speed to become the 3rd member of the House.
What the fuck is his name? Oh God, I gotta stop swearing. I'm trying to be a little more family friendly. But actually, though, what did they say his name was? Can we get subtitles on this, please?
Moving at astonishingly waging war against the United States. George Anthony DeVolder Santos is moving at astonishingly high speed to become the 3rd member of the House of Representatives expelled for behavior that does not include waging.
George Anthony doubled or Santos. This is terrible CCs. If you think about it, yeah, technically all they did is leave, and then technically the North was like, we got bills to pay. Well, yeah, no, yeah, no, kind of. Like, no. Like, basically they said, hey, listen, like, you can't make profit off of not paying anybody. You know, like, and the South said, listen, like, our business is basically dependent on not paying our workers. That's literally what we live on, and we don't have that fancy automation stuff you guys have up north. And there is no way to automate picking cotton. Let's not get into the Civil War. It's a slippery slope.
Democratic Congressman Robert Garcia of California filed a 1-sentence resolution in the House of Representatives today, resolving that, quote, Representative George Santos be, and he hereby is expelled from the House of Representatives. It is not yet clear how that resolution might come to a vote in the House, where the voting agenda on the House floor is normally controlled by Republican Speaker Kevin McCarthy.
We've been talking, of course, to House Republicans.
I think the reason people don't know those things is because they remember the bigger reason being slavery. Like, we can dress it up and say whatever we want, but in the end it was slavery, right? And they said, hey, listen, that's not cool anymore. And then the South said, hey, listen, we have bills to pay, and you can't force me to pay my workers too, which weren't really workers. They were more like things. And that's terrible. Do we really have to get into that? What percentage own them? Enough of a percentage. It doesn't matter what the percentage was, because the people in power get to make the choices that send the rest of us to war. It's the same reason why they made that whole argument during Vietnam when they said that, you know, enough? What's enough? 1%. What's enough? 0.1%, man, as slavery. Like, again, it doesn't really matter. The point is that the people who had power, the power over the laws, over the states, over the counties, had slaves. And they said that having slaves was an integral part of their livelihood, of their business. Like, it is inseparable from slavery. You can dress it up and you can make it about debt. You can make it about, you know, paying bills and stuff. But in the end, it really always comes back down to slavery. Now, let's look at the liar that is Santos.
Asked for his resignation, and so we're going to get this onto the floor, and we're going to expel George Santos. If this doesn't leave House Ethics, or they choose, or McCarthy chooses not to move this onto the floor for a vote, then there's other ways, now that this has started, for us to force this onto the floor.
And the new George Santos scandal of the day was reported by Politico today, saying George Santos was criminally charged with fraud in Pennsylvania when he was accused of writing bad checks in Pennsylvania in 2017.
Is this what they're talking about from stealing from the dog breeders? He just wrote a bad check? I mean, no, that's also bad. That's terrible.
The purpose of those checks,
they never got their money.
The memo line of each check was
for puppies. For puppies, he says.
Puppies. George Santos eventually had the charges dismissed in 2021.
How? Wait, what?
First campaign for Congress. Joining us now is one of the Democrats who introduced that resolution to expel George Santos today, Representative Becca Balint from Vermont. She's also a member of the House Oversight Committee. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. This is the fastest move toward expulsion of a member of the House that we've ever seen. What is the
Thanks
next
for
step
chat
here?
I'm still going to go at it on my own, though.
So the next step is really pushing to have Republican leadership finally hold this person accountable for his actions. He has carried out tremendous fraud against his constituents. You've had in the last few weeks members of Congress on the Republican side saying that he should not be there. Of course, we had Mitt Romney saying that last night. We have to restore some kind of faith in government. We're at an all-time low here. Having someone in Congress that we absolutely cannot trust is not going to help us rebuild that trust with the American people.
And you can go straight to the vote. There's nothing that requires any kind of House Ethics Committee investigation before a vote like this.
Absolutely, because we already have numerous instances that he has admitted that his resume was fabricated. And
so they're saying, hey, listen, if he had just lied and just kept lying, we would have had to take this to the ethics committee. He probably wouldn't have been kicked out because, you know, it's biased against us, blah, 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 etc. But since he admitted that he lied, we can get it. All they need is a vote. All they need is like a simple majority.
We want to get folks on the record. We want to get the Republican leadership on the record. Is it right to have someone serving alongside us that clearly has been dishonest with his constituents and the American people? Is it not true that we need some kind of integrity in holding people accountable? And as an openly gay member of Congress in this 118th, you know, I and my colleagues, whether they are of the LGBTQ community or whether they're not, many of us ran on the same issues, which is having a clarity of purpose, bringing this democracy back to a healthy place post January 6th. This does not help us to do that.
I want to take a look at some of the work you did yesterday in yesterday's Republican House hearing about Twitter. Apparently, they're going to have hearings about Twitter every day. Let's take a look at this.
Here we go.
Were any decisions approved or acted upon based on the political party making the request?
No, our teams were trained to enforce our rules consistently and fairly without regard to any sort of political ideology.
Okay, hold on. Time out. I understand what she's saying here. She's saying, hey, listen, you know, it's not us, it's you, blah, 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 blah. Look, we all have biases. We all have biases, and we need to understand that we all come with a bias. I would say that, you know, you can get trained to be impartial, but there is always going to be a bias. So, you know, this does need further investigation. Let's see what she has to say. Like, this is one of those points where, like, this is a fair point. This is a very fair point. You know, like, it doesn't matter who's making this point, but, like, you should not be able to influence whether one ideology is more prevalent than another based on, like, the political party that's in charge or has more influence at the time.
Thank you. So I believe that what's happening here is my Republican colleagues know that the premise of this whole hearing is misleading. There is no evidence that the Biden campaign had anything to do with the Hunter Biden New York Post story. And the evidence we do have simply shows that the Biden campaign did what the Trump campaign and millions of Twitter users do routinely.
It seems like you're going to...
Are they saying that they basically just filed a complaint? Like, you know, like they went to like Twitter's help thing and said, hey, listen, like I'm getting... I mean, technically, yeah, I think that is what they did, isn't it? Like, they basically went to them and said, hey, this is a revenge porn, basically, because, like, it's Hunter Biden's dick.
Going to be in a series of hearings like that all year.
Unfortunately, yes, I believe we are. But as our ranking member, Jamie Raskin, has said to us, we have to be a voice of truth and reason on that committee. And we have to make sure that we hold our colleagues responsible and accountable when they make false statements within that committee. And we're going to have to check them every single time.
Fair.
We have to restore some kind of semblance of integrity to government. And I see that committee as one important place in which we can do that.
All right. That's fair. You know what? Fine. Go for it. I will say it's something that does need to get a close examination of, though. Like, it's not something that you can just kind of, like, throw to the side and everything. What is this? What was I looking for? Senator Romney rebukes sick puppy.
For last night's State of the Union address.
No. Anyways, the point is Santos is a wild card. And they are trying to kick him out because he is bad. Can I find the clip? Can I just, is there like a shorts of this? Oh, this looks like shorts. Hold on. This is CBS Morning. Maybe I'll get it.
George Santos of New York and Senator Mitt Romney of Utah. Santos was standing along the aisle. You see him there in that orange tie. Romney reportedly called him a sick puppy and said he had no shame. Take a listen.
Given the fact that he's under ethics investigation, he should be sitting in the back row and staying quiet instead of parading in front of the president and people coming into the room.
Yeah, Mitt Romney is so done. Like, he's just sitting there so done with his party. He's sitting there like, hey, what happened to the respect of being in government? What happened to being like a respectful whatever? Like, oh, I'm so done. Look, this is a petty argument. This is basically just him being like, look, Santos shouldn't be like right in front of me. You know, like, it's my spot. Like, what? But at the same time, like, I get it. It's kind of a it's kind of like it's like a how do I say this? George Santos is kind of like, yeah, Mitt Romney lost. Yeah, it's fine. But wait, no. He didn't lose this last election. He's still there. He's fine. But what I'm saying is, you know that girl who Leviticus, I wouldn't start with that because didn't Trump lose? Who would care what that loser has to say? Boom, right back at you. Like, oof, hard. Anyways, look, look, Santos is kind of like that girl that's kind of like constantly in those movies. She always puts herself right in front of the popular guy, like gets all dolled up and and then pushes everyone else out of the way. Where's that? Right, like this one, right? Like this. Get on my way, I'm the star. See, that's what Santos reminds me of, like that kind of action. Anyways, moving on. That's enough Trump digs. That's enough Santos digs. Let's get on to the big news. So, this past week, there were earthquakes in Turkey and Syria. We're going to look into why that happened. We're going to look into what is happening. It's something Spank Hillary. Hillary Clinton shot herself in the foot several times. And Hillary should not have been the candidate that year. I am still pissed that it didn't end up being Bernie. Yep, I was totally for Bernie that year, and then they screwed him at the DNC, and I watched it happen, and it was disgusting. Disgusting. Anyways, let's see. No. Yes, this one.
Well, when Turkey was hit by another large earthquake in 1999, 18,000 people were killed then. New construction methods were meant to have been brought in to limit the damage when it happened again, which, Emily, was only...
Okay. What do you mean by selling out? Do you mean writing a book and selling it? Do you think that socialism means that you don't get to own a business and do your own things and make money and profit? Because I think Bernie describes himself as a democratic socialist, and like he's doing great as a democratic socialist, and that's what he's been, I think, his entire career. Last time I checked, he endorsed Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden. Is that what you mean by selling out? Oh, well, I mean, that's just him saying like, hey, listen, it's not me, I'm not the nominee, and we still need somebody in there. And if it's going to be him or the other guy, I'd rather it be this guy. Like, that's all he's doing. Like, I think that's not even selling out anymore. That's sold out independent. We've talked about why a third party would never win. We've talked about this before. It's impossible for a third party to actually win, especially in a presidential election. It'd be insane. All he'd really be doing is stealing votes from the Democratic candidate. Until we fix the elections, that's all that independent really means. It just means, stealing votes from whoever I would be competing with. Anyways, let's see what happens.
In a matter of time, the quakes they've been dreading.
Absolutely. And in many ways, there's no surprise that an earthquake of this magnitude hit in this part of the world. It's an earthquake hotspot, and sadly, they are to be expected. Turkey and Syria sit at the crossroads of 4 tectonic plates. And for years...
4? Oh my God. No wonder they're getting screwed like that. Oh my God. Look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then this guy's also got 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh my God. If I, oh my God, man. Listen, this is why building codes need to be so on point. Because, this is, oh my God, look at this. The earth must shake here, every day.
Anatolian and Arabian plates have been pushing against each other horizontally across what's known as a strike-slip fault. On Monday, the stress built up so much it caused the deadliest earthquake seen in recent years, and it wasn't.
Yeah, so see, this is why I've been wondering about this, because they had 2 earthquakes in the span of 2 or 3 days. It's been insane over there.
Just felt along the fault line, but for hundreds of miles around. Geologists think the stress from the first quake triggered the other massive quake. The impact was colossal. The quake's epicenter was in Gaziantep. From there, the devastation was spread across 10 provinces in.
Jesus. 13 million people. Oh my God, man. What do you even do with that? Look at this. This is gigantic. And is this just the beginning of it?
Turkey, where more than 13 million people live. In Kahramanmaraş, most of the city centre has been destroyed. In Adıyaman, several government buildings collapsed. And the airports of Malatya and Hatay were badly damaged. Across the border in Syria, it was also devastating, with around 10 million people affected in the area. That includes about 4 million internally displaced
not to say it loudly,
in
but
Syria's
damn.
large opposition region around Idlib. But why was the damage so great? Well, unsurprisingly, it was one of the biggest hit on land and occurred at a shallow depth, only 11 miles deep.
So it was a huge and right near the surface. So they literally got about the worst case scenario they could have. Oh my God. Yeah, so we're gonna take a look at this. I'm gonna try not to show anything too graphic. We're gonna pick and choose. Because there have been some scenes of just devastation across this place. But yeah, places like these need to invest in their infrastructure. They need to invest in actually building buildings that are, I don't know how to say this. There are some buildings that are more durable to shaking, right? There's certain ways to build it. They've got a little model. I'm going to show it to you guys later, but they'll shake it and you'll see that depending on the size of the buildings you build, certain ways of building them, stuff like that, it can affect how they wobble when the earth shakes. And when you want one that basically neutralizes all that wobble and keeps it down. But obviously that's not what's been happening here. They've just been, building as best as they could. And then Syria has had a really rough time with the rescue efforts because, again, we're going to look at it all, but just the wars, the lack of, a structure, it's been hard. It's been really hard to save people here.
Pretty close to the surface and near populated areas. Buildings should, of course, be reinforced to help withstand a shock, but thousands collapsed. And look at this. Look what happened in 1999 when a 7.6 magnitude quake struck Turkey. Shockingly similar scenes. There have been efforts to prevent this, something called pancake collapse, where tragically few people survive. But there are questions over whether new building regulations are actually being enforced. And this matters because it will happen again. And sadly, Julie, scientists have no way of predicting when or precisely where.
Okay,
yeah, no, that's the scariest part about earthquakes. They just happen. Boom. Pretty much for any reason. All right. So it looks like there are building regulations, codes in place that are probably meant to prevent that kind of stuff from being devastating. The problem is they don't have enough people enforcing those codes. And I'm sure they're bribing some of them off too. But, let's not assume that everybody's a bad apple, but there's definitely at least one. Anyways, let's keep looking. Let's see what happened. Weather, years of war efforts. Oh, boy. All right.
Many people have...
Hold on. Before we get into that, let's see what the death toll is. This was 2 hours ago. That's probably more accurate than 2 days ago. Oh, boy. It's already double what that number was. That's not
earthquake,
good.
but nearly a week after the disaster, survivors are still being found buried in the rubble. World News Tonight anchor David Muir is live in Turkey with more on these remarkable rescues. Good morning, David.
Lindsay, good morning, and we are witnessing at this hour an unimaginable and heartbreaking scene unfolding here behind me in Adana, Turkey. Take a look over my shoulder here, and you can see the search and rescue teams who have been working around the clock here. This used to be a 7.
By the way, I should mention this. There are all kinds of charities that you can donate to that will help these people. I don't have any of them. I might find them and put the links in the chat later, but obviously, like, if you have some extra, money laying around, you want to do something good with it, just donate a little bit. $5 is probably more than enough.
17 story.
You could do more, but $5 is plenty.
Story apartment building, and what they have done just moments ago is something sadly we have learned means they have found another body. They are now holding a blanket up, a show of respect for these lives lost as they find one after another here throughout the earthquake zone. The story across Turkey and Syria this morning, more than 21,000 dead, and yet still the miracles.
This morning here on the ground in Turkey, unimaginable devastation as far as the eye can see. Overnight, we witnessed volunteers and workers painstakingly clearing rubble brick by brick, hoping for life, but increasingly finding heartbreak.
It's impossible to imagine the work that continues for these search and rescue teams, and you can see
I can't believe
one
this.
of these very difficult moments.
Because I mean,
holding up a blanket.
There are people that are still just trying to hold on at this point. I'm like, oh my God.
Yet still, despite the odds and difficult conditions, the more than 600 aftershocks slowing rescue workers and the bitter cold, there have been incredible stories of survival.
Amazing.
This morning, we have learned of a 10-day-old baby rescued after 90 hours underneath the rubble, taken into an ambulance, wrapped in a thermal blanket. His mother saved too.
His mother was saved too. Oh my God.
Reporting in the border town of Antakya, witnessing this miraculous.
Sorry. This is actually one of those things that news. This is part of the reason why I don't like big news, is because they will constantly find like all the craziest stories and then try to basically make a 24-hour news network of just replaying this over and over and over again. That's why I only do this once a week. But those moments really hit you. Like, they know what they're doing because it's an emotional appeal, but like, oh my God. Like, that's a miracle. That's a miracle is what that is. Because, I mean, like, imagine all the people that had to go in there and had to work to get those people out. Like, a few more hours, just, like, that would have been a very different story at a very sad time. Oh, my God.
Rescuers hearing survivors calling for help beneath the rubble more than 80 hours after the earthquake struck. Workers calling for silence as they try to locate the source of the sound. Finally, after careful work.
Because what people don't realize is when you're doing this, it's not just like dig them out, like it's as you're digging this out, as you're trying to clear this huge bit of rubble out, you could accidentally cause the whole thing to collapse even further down on itself. And whoever you just tried to save could just end up like a pancake. Like, this stuff takes literally, I mean, like we were just looking at that, literally dozens of people working together trying to get this, trying to save them, trying to make sure that they're alive.
Are pulled from the rubble.
These moments are becoming increasingly rare and increasingly remarkable. More than 3 days after they were buried.
Yeah, that's incredible.
A mother and a son rescued alive from under the rubble.
In nearby Hatay, another moment of joy when 3-year-old Ayman is pulled to safety, keep them trapped for 85 hours. In Gaziantep, these rescuers overcome with emotion as they pull 17-year-old Adnan out from the debris, the teen miraculously surviving a harrowing 96 hours underneath. This morning, help now pouring in from around the world. Our Marcus Moore in Adiyaman, where rescue teams from the U.S. are now on the ground.
For days, the only ones searching for survivors amidst the rubble here in Adiyaman were the everyday citizens. But now teams from the United States and other countries are here to help in this urgent effort, and you can see just the scale of this catastrophe.
Wow, we sent people over there? I mean, look, I'm not going to say that we shouldn't get involved, because this is literally like a humanitarian crisis. This is like what the UN was made for. This is why we created a coalition of nations. But like, how do we do that? How do we do that without arguing? You know, like who greenlit that? Was that just like a president thing? Does the president just get to send people over there and be like, "Yep, you're good, go"? Because I don't see that making it through Congress right now.
Nearly 200 people from the elite U.S. aid teams are now in Turkey. Dogs searching for survivors. The teams with specialized search equipment. They can work for weeks in this devastated city. But across the border in Syria,
I love how we have so much technology and all this, and it's dogs. It's still dogs, man. Like, like sometimes you look. Some people keep talking about automation. I know I've talked a lot about automation on the show, but like, nature does things right. You know, sometimes you really can't just beat nature. It's insane.
Syria, war making it difficult for international aid to arrive. Images of the devastation there just as chilling. Above the city of Besnaya, a haunting scene on top of smoldering rubble. Rescue volunteers known as the White Helmets working around the clock across Syria, determined to find life buried deep beneath the debris. While back in Turkey, in the middle of the night here, we meet the families camped in front of small fires like this one, trying to stay warm as they wait for a miracle. We meet Zuhal and Khan, and we learn of unthinkable loss. How many loved ones did you lose? 12. They say the psychological toll has been unbearable. Irdi and Razul say they're here as they wait for word about a friend, a mother with her daughter who are in that rubble.
I'm gonna be honest, I know that there's this whole thing about Latinos having a lot of family. I can't really imagine losing 12 family members. Like, I'm not sure I have 12 family members to lose. Like, I think at that point, like, you either have to include me or just, like, I don't know, we start digging into some, like, distant cousins and stuff, because, like, oh my God. Like, that's everybody. That's, like, everybody I care about. Like, you done. Why? Oh my God. Oh. Oh. So look, I'm not saying that, you know, better regulations and like rescue crews and like a better organization and maybe not being in a war-torn country would have helped these people, because disaster's still going to strike, obviously. And this is an act of nature. This is just what happens. And the sad part is that we just can't save more people, because this is terrible. We're at 22,000 killed as of like 2 hours ago. That's insane. Don't blame Joe Biden for this. It's not his fault.
And their heart. Your mind and your heart is here.
Oh, never change, Lovey. Never change.
Yes, they tell me, this is a way to honor them. And you know, we were up in the overnight hours here in Turkey with these families, with these loved ones. They have built those small fires all through the neighborhood here, not only to keep warm, but to keep vigil. And each and every one of them told us that they do it because they have to honor those who still have not been pulled from the rubble. We think about all of the families this morning, and I also think about something else. If you look at all these search and rescue workers, they have been at this now entering day 5 here, and as they hold up yet another blanket on the pile there of that rubble, you just have to think about what it is they have witnessed day in and day out, and they do it with dignity for the lives lost here throughout the earthquake zone.
I mean, like, the sad part is this is going to take weeks. This is going to take weeks to clean up, and every minute they lose is possibly somebody that's just not going to make it. And they know that, and that's got to be the worst part about this job. I mean, literally, like, there's a small army here that just mobilized to just take care of this little neighborhood here. Like, I mean, I guess this is actually one of their bigger cities. But still, like, this is basically a small army that they just mobilized to clean this up, and every moment is another person that could get lost. I mean, at this point, they're going to find more corpses than there are, you know, people, but I think they're just going to keep pushing forward, hoping to find one more person. You know, at this point, I think that's all they can do is just keep going and try to find one more person that's alive, and every time just one more. Oh man, that is terrible. All right, so weather. Years of war hamper the what is this? The science behind the massive. I guess we could look at that, but we did just look at the other one. I'll do it real quick at 1.5. We'll see what it has to say.
Series of powerful successive earthquakes struck the Turkish-Syrian border on February 6th. The first and most powerful was a 7.8 magnitude quake.
This region certainly hasn't seen an earthquake this size in centuries.
Destruction followed as aftershocks hit the region.
Yep.
Then a second 7.5 magnitude quake hit.
Oof! Oof! Look at that. That's like a cluster bomb of earthquakes. It's terrible. Oh my god.
In the afternoon, followed by its own series of aftershocks. In their wake, a humanitarian and economic crisis. Thousands of people are reported dead, and even more are still missing. It's not the first time this region has suffered a violent quake, and it won't be the last. To understand why, you have to look under the surface,
They're gonna show
where
the
three
plates.
tectonic
Yep.
plates converge. Together, these plates cause a unique and
Yeah, look at this. Look at this. It's literally like the intersection of 3 of them is like right here. That's terrible. And then over here too. Oh man.
potentially devastating type of earthquake. The first quake was located here, 11 miles under the town of Gaziantep, Turkey. 11 miles may sound deep, but that's actually shallow for a major quake. The town is especially vulnerable because it sits near the meeting of 2 tectonic plates. Tectonic plates are massive slabs of rock on the Earth's crust from 10 miles to...
Alright, this seems like it's going to be basically the same thing that we learned earlier. But maybe a little nicer. If we come back to this, we'll look at it again. This is what I really wanted to see.
Lives when their buildings collapsed in the earthquakes in Turkey and
This is the BBC. They're talking about how weather and years of war actually made this a lot harder.
Syria. But there are still some moments of joy when survivors are rescued. Let's take a look at this video. It was filmed by the White Helmets Rescue Group, which of course operates in rebel-held parts of Syria. It shows a family, including a small child. You can see they're wrapped in blankets, trapped on the 3rd floor of their partially collapsed apartment block. Well, the rescue teams are able to use ladders to reach them and bring them to safety.
Oh yeah, the stairs are
It
gone.
happened after midnight on Tuesday morning. That's almost 24 hours after the first huge earthquake hit.
Okay, listen, I'm not going to say that this would have saved you because, again, this is a super serious issue. But perhaps if you live in a country that is prone to having missing pieces of buildings and stuff, learn parkour. It's not a solution. It is not a solution. But you could theoretically survive that jump. You'd have a better chance of surviving the jump. That's all I'm saying. It would not help. Because this is a terrible, terrible thing that happened. But you could roll.
Well, let's concentrate more now on the situation in Syria. Dr. Hossam El-Shakawi is the Middle East and Africa Regional Director for International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, and told us how years of conflict have already left both sides in Syria with severe shortages of medical supplies.
It is a race against time to save lives, to get to people either trapped under the rubble or people who are desperately needing shelter from the cold or have injuries, or even just people who are elderly, sick, and pregnant women and children. So we're working on multiple fronts with the Syrian Red Crescent, supporting them to scale up. The volunteer networks and branches are throughout these communities, but the resources are limited. They have gone through a 12-year war. The country suffers from sanctions that are crippling. There's lack of fuel, lack of excavation equipment. People are digging the rubble with their own hands. This is the situation. The country has severe shortages of cash and medical supplies, and we're trying to mobilize that now from the international community and neighbors who have been generous so far, and we're encouraging them to be even more generous and to put away political differences and focus now on the humanitarian mission, that cause of saving lives. We have teams operating in Turkey. This is covered by our Europe office. Turkey operation. Turkey is a solid nation, very organized, very capable. No issues of.
Okay, so basically saying Turkey was decent and Syria was not. Hold on, let's keep going. Let's do
shortages, unlike Syria. So we're talking about a tale of two different countries.
He's so slow.
The scale, although of the destruction is bigger in Turkey, it's a much more organized response. In Syria, pre-earthquake, and we're talking about 2 massive earthquakes that hit us yesterday. In Beirut, I'm 400 kilometers away from the.
Is it me, or is at 1.5 speed him Like, does he sound a little more normal at 1.5 speed? Because I'm kind of getting that vibe here.
Epicenters, and I was shaken out of bed. And we have been working since then around the clock with our teams.
That was Dr. Hossam El-Sharkawi from the Federation of the Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies.
All right, so Hossam El-Sharkawi, thank you.
I want to share some pictures with you now, which give an idea of just how widespread the destruction caused by the earthquakes really is. Let's take a look at these.
Oh. Did it just, like, open up like a... Oh, my God, that's terrible. It's like a hot dog bun. And then over here, just rubble. It says rubble everywhere. Oh, my God.
These pictures were filmed just a short while ago by a drone in Hatay province, that's in Turkey, along the Mediterranean coastline, which borders Syria. It's around 100 kilometres from the epicenter of Monday's 7.8 magnitude tremor, and there have been several tremors with a magnitude of between 4.2 and 4.8 in that area since then. Now, you can pretty much see how
What? So the 7.8 was the biggest one, but they're still having earthquakes? They still have to deal with that with the rescue efforts going on?
Every single building, nearly every building, has been damaged in some way. Many have completely collapsed, some with the floors coming down vertically, others simply left as piles of rubble. You can also see many of these buildings which are still standing and leaning in a very precarious manner, if you like, and could yet fall. Well, officials say that severe weather conditions are making it very hard to bring aid to this region and are also hampering rescues. And only rescue and aid vehicles are now being allowed to enter or leave Hatay province. Well, let's hear now how Bedia Gucham, a restaurant owner...
All right, so what I will say is something happened recently that actually made this really difficult. I'm trying to remember the specifics of it, but I know that the U.S., some other allies, may have acquired the location of a certain terrorist through the guise of being charity and aid workers. And some of these countries have become a little more hesitant to accept international aid because of that. I don't think that that's happening here in Syria, but I know that it's been a concern in a few places. So I hope that they're not going to get into that right now. But it's one of those reasons why, like, charities need to be charities, nonprofits need to be nonprofit. Like, there needs to be some integrity to it, because if not, it doesn't really matter. You know, like, if, like, basically, like, these countries are in a vulnerable state and they're asking for help, and if they invite us in and then we take advantage of that to, I don't know, spy, wage war, stuff like that, it lessens the credibility of these things, and it makes us closer being international enemies, not international allies. Now, I don't think that's happening here, but I do know that that's been an issue in the past, and I hope it's not happening right now.
Nagana in the south of Turkey, which is 100 kilometers north of the epicenter, has been living over the past 24 hours. I spoke to her a little bit earlier and began by asking her what it's like when that huge earthquake hit.
Hello. It was an amazing surprise. It's very scary. It was 4 in the morning when everybody is asleep. Our building shook like a leaf in the wind. It was unbelievable. I have been through earthquakes before, but this was just incredible. It was long too, because I woke my partner up.
Because again, we saw where they lived. There's 4 tectonic plates there. Like, I wouldn't be surprised that they've seen earthquakes before.
We took 2 kids and walked to the center of the building where load-bearing walls are strong and high, and we waited it out there, and I had time to move the kids, grab flashlights and bags and everything. It was long and very scary.
Wow. So I'm guessing they must train them a little bit, because she knew exactly what to do. Yeah. If you're in that situation, that's perfect. Find a load-bearing wall. See if you can huddle down, get in the corner. Honestly, I think is probably one of the best things that you can do. We can look at earthquake safety later. I'm kind of curious as to, like, what you should do.
Tell me about what's happened in the time since, because I believe that you've been arranging to supply food to people in Antakya.
Yes, I am the president of a graduate group, a Tarsus American high school graduates, and we have gathered together, raised some funds, and I am trying to buy supplies for a field restaurant, a field kitchen out there. Because apparently all the suppliers are down too in Antakya. Antakya is a very...
This is one of those moments where, like, you have to start thinking, no, I'll be staying right there in that door. Actually, that's a good place too, I guess. Well, I'm gonna look up earthquake safety so that we all know what to do. But this is one of those cases of, like, what are you doing, right? Like, if you can't do this, do that. If you can't do that, do this. Like, she can't go out there and dig people out of the rubble, but she can organize a field kitchen, get some of these people fed, maybe get some food for the people that are coming out, the survivors. Like, These people are basically working crazy hours right now trying to save all these people.
The old town with the 1.7 million people.
This is literally the least that she could do.
The town has been destroyed.
No, not the
all
least,
the shops,
but
all the
still,
wholesalers are closed at the moment, and these field kitchens are having trouble finding supplies. So I'm trying to load a lorry and send stuff out there. Everyone is pitching in. Everyone is trying to do their best.
How difficult has it been? I mean, I know that some of the areas that you're describing, especially the areas that we don't really see on the news, the kind of the less urban areas, more rural areas, those have been very badly impacted by the 2 earthquakes, and yet it's difficult, isn't it, to get aid to those areas as quickly as one would like.
The roads have been destroyed. Main roads are destroyed. All the normal roads and the by roads.
And oh my God, I didn't even think about that. Like, how are they getting the food out there? Because they don't have roads. The roads are oh my God.
The weather has been bad. We've had snowstorms and we've had torrential rains. So all the lesser.
This is actually the worst case scenario.
Quality roads are working, but they're very slow. From here to Antakya from the highway would have taken us 3.5 hours. At the moment, I hear it takes about 8 hours to get supplies out there.
And you know, I know that Betty, you've been helping obviously yourself, but what has the government response been like?
Everybody is pitching in. Everybody is doing their best. During
you hear that? She's like, what is the government response been like? And she's like, everybody's pitching in. Everybody's doing their best. Oh, here we go.
The 1999 earthquakes, we had the soldiers on the ground. They used to help with everything they had. Apparently, they haven't been deployed yet. We were expecting the soldiers to come in because once they do, I mean, they are the widest network a country has. So when they start pitching in, everything will change. But at the moment, the civilian response has been amazing. The devastation is unbelievable. There is no description to it.
Okay, before we get too uppity up about the army not being involved, this was 3 days ago, which would make it February 7th. Oh boy. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no.
Hello, welcome to BBC World News. More than 16,000 people are now known to have died after Monday's earthquakes in Turkey and Syria, and aid agencies are concerned there may be a second wave of deaths. There has been criticism of the Turkish government's response, but President Erdogan says it wasn't possible to be prepared for disasters on this scale. Our Middle East correspondent Anna Foster, who was among the first journalists to reach the epicenter zone, sent this report from the Turkish city of Kahramanmaraş.
This is not looking good.
The devastating power of the earth, seen from the air. Swathes of this city lie in ruins.
Yes,
buildings,
destruction.
Homes. Behind this blanket, an arm reveals a body.
Oh no.
Father lost. The goodbye is painful and public.
Because like this is his dad. This is his dad's. This is terrible.
To fade now, but the rescuers say that they will come back tomorrow, and the next day they will return to sites like this for as long as it takes to return loved ones to their relatives.
All right, so this is yesterday, and at this point, like I said, they're basically just getting bodies out, which is what happens at the later stages of these rescue operations. But still, you know, this is why we try to keep inventing. This is why humans innovate. It's to come up with solutions to these kinds of problems. So let's just see what happens.
They're rare now, but there are still moments of hope. A little girl, healthy and alive after 3 days buried.
Oh my God!
She says her siblings are down there too.
The siblings live?
Who've lost everything. But there's growing anger that help is coming too slowly, and there isn't enough of it. He says it's impossible to prepare for disasters on this scale.
We had some problems in some places like airports in the beginning. We had problems on the roads, but it's better today and it will be even better tomorrow.
Bodies now filled.
No! Oh my God! No! Like we'll get back to it eventually, but like that's a gym. That's a gym full of bodies. Oh no! Oh. When an emergency happens, that's what the army is there for. They're there to protect you. They're there to protect your freedoms. They're there to protect you. It is rough. And like I get his excuse, like the airplane can't land, the airports are bad, the roads are bad, it's hard to get places. But Turkey has one of the largest militaries in the world. Like, honestly, if we're ranking military powers, I would put Turkey, like, pretty close to the U.S. Maybe not, like, at... The U.S. is... I don't want to say this because it's going to get everybody riled up, but the U.S. is about 5 times stronger than pretty much everybody else. It's just because of how much we've been spending, right? But if there was a second, I would put Turkey up there. Turkey's got one of the closest in terms of spending, in terms of like what they're doing. Like that's where Turkey sits. Again, the U.S. is about 5 times higher than its nearest competitor because that's what we do to maintain the superiority that we do. But like they have a robust and large military. I don't understand why they're not putting it to use here. Like this is a perfect opportunity to do it. I know it would leave some parts of Turkey defenseless or at least less defended, but it's a mess right now. Yeah. I know. It's insane. Yeah, we've got the craziest lead in the world in military. It's just a shame that the only thing that, that really leads to is just bigger and better weapons. Again, like it solves a problem. It just there's a lot of other problems too, and we're not addressing those. So, anyways, let's keep going.
With a wedding dress, but now we'll dress up with a funeral shroud.
I'm a living God, every time.
I lost my feelings.
Look, like here's the thing, it's not even like I haven't seen gore before. Right? It's just like the separation. They're gonna keep it in the background while they talk about it, aren't they? All right, okay. Like okay, so here's a story that I heard. It wasn't so the New York Times put out a story at one point. I think it was the New York Times. And they were talking about a drone pilot who became addicted to pain medication and eventually moved into more hardcore drugs. Something about getting basically prescribed like antidepressants and then quickly getting removed. Like it's not important. The point is that he was talking about some of the things that they have to do as drone pilots and how he basically was told to follow these 2 men who may have been carrying weapons. And he was basically being given the order to like take them out. And he continued to surveil them instead of actually shooting them and find out that they weren't carrying weapons. They were just carrying fishing poles. And they were like heading somewhere to fish. And he was about to just take them out. But in some of the things that they were saying, like one of them said that some of them had to murder somebody, and then they followed the body to the funeral, and then they were given orders to basically take out everybody that showed up to the funeral. And they basically had to watch people show up to this funeral. Not everybody, obviously, but they were basically watching people mourn their family, and it's something that you don't really have to do in a lot of these cases. Like war is a lot easier when you just think of just boom, dead body down on the ground and don't have to think about the consequences that come after. The people crying, the dead bodies, the funerals, the families lost. But that's the truth of it, right? Like we're all humans, so there is somebody that will grieve us when we're gone, hopefully. There is still like a loss to be felt, even if you're on the right side, the wrong side, whatever side you're on. And so like I think what really hits me about this isn't so much like the gore, the dead body. Again, like we have action movies now that show like disgusting amounts of gore. So at this point, like gore is nothing. Horror movies too, but this, like the grieving, is so hard for me.
Each of these bundles marks a future cut short. A family separated. Every hour, the death toll rises. And even now, it's impossible to know how many lives this quake has claimed. Anna Foster, BBC News, Marash.
Well, we can talk live to Anna now. Anna, the grief in your report is almost unbearable to watch. Just tell us what's happening there where you are now in Gaziantep, that major city.
He described it perfectly. It's unbearable to watch. It hurts, man. It hurts.
This morning, and really the scenes when you see them, they almost, because they all look the same, these collapsed buildings, these piles of rubble, and the dust that you can maybe see in the air as well. It's just replicated in so many cities and so many towns across southern Turkey. And as you say as well, those images of absolute grief and anguish, sounds beyond words when people are waiting on the edge of sites like this, and when they finally find the bodies of their loved ones and they have to identify them, even though they know that they're trapped in there. Just that moment is awful to watch. It is a terrible thing for people to have to experience, and it is happening on such a huge scale across this part of southern Turkey. We talk about the death toll and the fact that it's rising by thousands every day. And because when you have buildings like this, huge buildings like this, whole apartment blocks, you have no idea how many people were in there. But in the main, they were full because this happened at night when people were asleep in their beds. And that's why so many people have been killed. And that is why the death toll continues to rise, and why it will continue to rise in the coming days even further.
And Anna, you can see the way that the heavy machinery behind you is just chewing through the huge chunks of concrete. Is there a difference in how rescuers approach buildings depending on how they collapsed, whether they went down in one or go over sideways, depending how that might...
You can see that's also a problem. Like, you could go in there with these gigantic bulldozer machines and make the problem worse for anyone that's still alive. At this point, I think they're caring less and less about that, but it's still like, it's a mess.
Sort of influence the outcome of whether people survive in there.
You're right, you're absolutely right, and that really does change the way they do things. So in buildings like this, where you can see that it's just quite clearly toppled floor onto floor onto floor, everything down into the foundation, they search it like this. They get big diggers and earth-moving machinery, and essentially they just sweep that rubble. And when they see, it sounds so awful to describe, but when they see maybe an arm or a hand or some clothing or something that looks like it might be a body, then they will stop and they will remove that body with as much dignity as they can. With the building...
See, all right, so what they're saying is if you just pancake, boom, then yeah, no, they're just going to dig it out. That's what they were talking about with the building codes, that it's just, God.
That don't look quite like that, the ones that have fallen sideways maybe, where it gives
All right,
you those...
hold on. I don't want to spend too much more time on this, but I do want to see... Oh, wait, hold on. That was the important part. That's what I wanted to see.
World News.
My bad.
They offer a chance for life, they offer a chance for survival in those voids, but they also are incredibly unstable as well, and something like this could well bring the rest of the building down. They think they can hear voices, because of course those...
Hold on, because this was the important part. This is what I came here to see. This is why we're watching this in the first place.
Fallen sideways maybe, where it gives you those spaces. They do that in a much more painstaking, much more careful way.
Okay, so what they're saying is if it fell on its side, then maybe you might still be alive, because you could have been trapped in one of the little crevices that were made. But still, this is a shit show. What it is. All right. No, we're not gonna look at the science behind it. Where was that Turkey building design thing? Oh, I missed it. All right, we're gonna look at Turkey's building design, and then we're gonna be back. Dang, what happened in a week? Everything, General. Everything happened. We're gonna cover Russia right after this, so don't worry. But everything happened. Turkey, Syria, Russia, everything. It's all a shit show. Oh man, building collapses. This was it.
Turkey, there were moments of hope. Survivors found amid the destruction. How well buildings protected residents played a significant role in lives saved and lost. Before this, Turkey was aware of the risks. The edge of the Anatolian plate runs through the country, and it's at these...
Yeah, so again, this is what I'm saying. They have to plan for this. They are literally on the fault. It would be literally irresponsible and dumb of them not to. Like, this is what you do. But like,
where one of the Earth's tectonic plates meets another, that friction can build up and be released as an earthquake. Now, this is a broad overview of the earthquakes Turkey has experienced over the last 120 years. You can see they're frequent, although there are long periods between quakes with a high magnitude seen at the top of this graph, events often connected with a greater loss of life, shown here by a larger circle. And it's this knowledge, this opportunity to prepare, which has made some angry about the performance of construction in the region where thousands of buildings collapsed.
Yeah, because these are all right. So this is what we were talking about. So there's two kinds. There was the pancake kind of falling, and there was the leaning over kind of falling. If it leaned over, you might have survived. If it pancaked, they don't even believe you survived. They were literally just going in there with bulldozers and just taking that shit out.
Earthquakes are actually a part of our lives, our history. So we live in a first degree earthquake zone as a country. However, we turn this into a natural disaster with an unsensible, opportunistic, or greedy manner, I mean.
Oh boy.
We'll come back to Turkey in a moment.
Boy.
But broadly, when a building is being designed, one main concern is whether the structure can withstand the weight bearing straight down. And an earthquake, though.
So this is what I was talking about. Like, there's a way to see, like, some of them shake more, some of them shake less. There's certain ways to design buildings. Like, yeah.
It shakes a building in all directions.
Do buildings everywhere instead of Japan or shit? Or do you mean inside of Japan?
And if horizontal forces aren't considered, they can tear joints apart. Now, this is a model of a Turkish housing block during an earthquake. Anything red implies that part of the building crushed.
Instead?
Anything blue is a fracture. Engineers have
I kind of want to see what Japanese buildings are like, but all right. So this is what they're saying. It's gotta take a little bit of wobble, but not so much
City, to allowing parts of the building to crumple, just like a modern car during a crash, absorbing energy to try and protect life. What's notable about the images from Turkey, however, is that some buildings appear to have completely collapsed, with floors stacking on top of each other, what's known as pancaking. This is the worst-case scenario when it comes to earthquake performance. Now, after the 1999 quake in northwest Turkey, which killed more than 17,000 people, investigations found many construction faults, including the use of corrosive beach sand in concrete. Turkey reacted by updating building regulations several times, most recently in 2018. Regulations now considered consistent with the best US or Japanese code.
I mean, that's what you want. You want it to wobble, but not fall.
Which you might expect to still perform poorly. But look at this image of the Turkish town of Izlahiye, particularly this white building over here. Google Street View shows it was still being constructed in 2020, the weight of the floors suspended above a large empty shop space. Now, that is a difficult design to survive an earthquake. And despite the regulations, recent satellite image appeared to show that it completely collapsed. The same is true for several recently constructed buildings on this street. Elsewhere, advertisements have circulated appearing to show buildings claiming to comply with regulations, buildings which collapsed. It's these kind of examples that some suggest show codes weren't tightly enforced, but engineers warn that until investigations are complete, not every collapse is a clear sign of design failure.
Okay, so see, this is what we're talking about when I say, like, invest in the IRS, invest in this, invest in that. You don't have enough people to be regulating this stuff. That's why things slip. That's why people lose things. That's why this happened. That, you know, there weren't people regulating that. They got away without, you know, these regulations, and then boom. Tell me that your friend is safe too, man. Don't just drop that bomb. Oh my God.
There are two massive earthquakes that have happened in fairly rapid succession. And so we see images, for example, of buildings that have survived the first earthquake and are standing and then are collapsed by the second earthquake event. But, you know, you can't design it for two such large events when it's already been weakened and damaged.
Critics, however, point to Turkey's numerous construction amnesties, most recently in 2018, which allowed illegal buildings to be given a certificate of approval if they paid a fee. Arrests followed Turkey's 1999 earthquake. Investigations will have to determine whether things could have been better this time around.
Oh boy. All right, so they did put, yeah, I'm glad he's okay. And again, that's what we were looking at. So they did put codes in, but then they decided to give a voucher if you had that code. That's not how that works. Things are up to code or they are not. You don't just pay somebody off and say, oh, I guess it's fine. Like, no, you tell them, hey, listen, that building is unsafe. It needs to be rebuilt. Or we need to make it structurally sound. Or whatever it is. Because, like, look at all the people that died. Literally, we just saw the video. They said that when it's a pancake, they literally just scoop it away and then they move on. Like, that's not okay. Am I telling another culture how they should run their country? I'm telling everybody how they should run their country. I don't care what culture you are. I'm telling you, don't do this. Don't do it. It's not smart. Here, hold on. We're going to look up real quick. Earthquake safety. But no, this is just ridiculous. It's a real American year. That's how we do it. All right, let's see. Oh, no. I didn't want to get rid of that video.
Today, Russia.
All right, hold on. We're going to look up real quick. Earthquake safety. Because I want to know what actual earthquake safety is. 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 1 month ago. They have one for kids? Yep, that's the one we're doing. Absolutely. Here we go. Kids, earthquake safety. I'm not going to spin this one up. We're going to have to watch it all together. Was that hand crank radio?
I'm Ben.
I'm Madison.
I'm Drew.
We're the Disaster Dodgers. And we're here to help you. Be prepared.
If you're still here, thank you for staying with me.
Today, we're going to shake things up a little bit.
Oh, no. Are they saying that that kid's causing the earthquakes?
An earthquake is the sudden, rapid shaking of the earth.
Hey, something's messing with my balance.
This is so mean.
It's caused by the breaking and shifting of underground rock.
Most earthquakes usually last less than 1 minute.
But it can seem like forever.
The size of an earthquake is measured by its magnitude and intensity. Magnitude measures the energy given off where the ground began shaking. Intensity describes the earthquake's strength and effects on people in different places.
Earthquakes can happen almost anywhere in the
every
country,
26 seconds?
and not just on the West
Insane.
Coast.
There's no way to predict when or where an earthquake will happen.
Seriously, why are they making it so that this kid makes the earthquakes come?
If you're indoors and you think an earthquake is happening, drop, cover, and hold on.
Okay.
First, drop to the ground.
All
Take
right.
cover from falling objects by getting
Cool.
under something sturdy. Hold on until the shaking stops.
Why are they making this kid do the thing? Why? Look at him. He's just
Don't try to run
boom,
outside,
boom, boom.
because things could fall on you and hurt you.
Okay, if you are in Turkey and or Syria and you believe that your building is not up to code, please run outside. Do not actually go under, like, no. That was actually really, really bad advice. Oh my god.
If you're outside, move away from buildings, streetlights, and power lines. Once you're in the open, stay there until the shaking stops. If you're in a
Yeah,
car
there
with
you
an
go.
adult, they should stop driving and everyone should stay in the car.
Yeah.
Earthquakes happen without warning, so it's important for you and your family to put together a family communications plan and practice it.
Have an earthquake drill over the weekend. Drop, cover, and hold on.
And since an earthquake could knock out power, water, and other things, make sure your family emergency kit is ready for action.
What is this, an emergency kit?
So be
Oh
ready.
my god.
Tonight, talk to your family about making a plan and take the time to practice it.
Always remember, when it comes to disasters,
Seriously, why did they make that kid bounce around like he was causing the earthquakes?
Be informed.
Make a plan.
Oh?
get prepared. And go to ready.com.
Alright, okay. Well, actually, this is kind of handy. Thank you. Disaster Dodgers? Was that it was? Oh boy. Alright, okay. Let's never do that again. Let's pretend like we didn't do that. And let's just never do that. So anyways, now we know. The thing to do when you are, in danger is stop, drop, hold on. You guys got it. You were paying attention, right? Anyways, point is, look, earthquakes happen. They happen everywhere. They will not always happen at the same magnitude. I mean, I'm in a place that barely ever gets any kind of earthquakes, but at the same time, like, I was in the shower once when one hit and like all my stuff fell down and I was like, what happened? Did I just like shake it so hard with my fabulous shower singing? No. But you should be prepared. You should have an emergency plan. And this goes for everybody, not governments, not whatever. Like everybody should have an emergency plan. You should have an emergency plan. Think about a realistic emergency that could happen in your area. Like in California, wildfires. That's a great thing to look up. You should have a wildfire plan. Some experts recommend that you go to sleep with shoes on during wildfire season. I'm not going to recommend that. That's weird. What I will recommend is that somebody made a business idea that is basically socks that can turn into shoes that you can wear outside. I'm not going to tell you what that is. 1977 earthquake, Romania. I will look it up, sure. Might as well. We'll take a quick look. And then after this, we want to look at Russia real quick, and then we'll go to the SODU. Is that what they call it? SODU? State of the Union? Romania, 1977. Nerds. Yeah, what I will say about nerds is, oh god, why Romania has so many earthquakes. Oh boy, it looks like you guys get a lot. All right, I will look at the AP archive. This is probably not gonna be great. Oh man. So, what was I saying? Right. What I will say about nerds is nerds study the things that you are not interested in so that they can benefit you in ways you don't even care about. That's what nerds do. Except for, the lame ones that are just kind of like a leech on society. But you could be a leech on society and not be a nerd. It happens. Anyways.
Tragedy in Romania.
Oh boy.
Burial service for some of the 1,500 people who are known to have died in the.
A useless school subject you did or your kids do, I will start. Yeah, sure, why not?
Country's
There's
worst
probably a few.
earthquake disaster for over 70 years.
Logic? Logic is not a
Scenes
useless
like
school
these
subject.
have been repeated in many towns and villages along our.
Wait, actually, what is logic? What do you mean? Is that it? Because if you just mean logic in general, I feel like logic is quite important to everything. All right, fine. I will go first. What's a useless school subject? What did they teach me that I never, ever, ever used? No, I used pretty much everything, actually. Hold on. I'm gonna be honest, I had a pretty good education. Hold on. I did learn African history. I will say that I never properly put that to use and may have not taken the class as seriously as I thought. It's a subject to stress you, and it's some bloody riddles that you think for an hour. That sounds like a lot of fun, actually. That sounds terrible, but like a lot of fun.
150
All right, hold on. This is 11 minutes. 1977 Romania. Let's just make this like one. Let's just do this at 2 times speed. Sorry. This is a lot.
The quake happened at 9:27 in the evening on March 4th. Its epicenter, 70 miles northeast of Bucharest and 60 miles beneath the Carpathian Mountains. The depth and the strength of 7.2 on the Richter scale sent tremors rattling windows in places as far apart as Rome and Moscow. In Bucharest, they did much more than that. A city of 1.75 million people lived through 30 seconds of terror as walls swayed and floors gave way.
Look at that, just parts of the building gone.
Inhabitants buried beneath hundreds of tons of broken concrete with almost no chance of escape.
Yep, buried, yep. It kind of makes me feel sad because I feel like it's moved really it's moved forward a lot, and at the same time, not at all, right? Because like they're still doing basically the same thing in 1977. They're still coming in with bulldozers. I mean, what do you do?
The southern suburbs of the city were worse hit. Many of the housing blocks there were built more than 20 years ago, when technology and materials were not advanced enough to provide any degree of protection from earthquakes. More recently built apartments fared better. Even so, some of these too collapsed. The government's announced that their designers will be prosecuted for negligence. Besides those that were completely destroyed, another 160 blocks were badly damaged, and in all,
Yo, they balance the audio on this so terribly. I can hear the bulldozer like a tank, but I can barely hear the person talking.
1,000 livestock may also have perished. In a country where living standards are the lowest in the Soviet bloc, the disaster's a serious setback for agriculture. Production was still trying to recover from losses suffered in last year's floods.
Is this when Romania was still part of the Soviet bloc? Bro, that's why they didn't give you help. That's why. Oh my god, wait. Yeah. Hold on. Oh my god, it was a Soviet thing. I am so sorry. This is yeah, so this is literally just the whole like because of you being communist, they didn't want to help. Oh my God, that's terrible. That's literally. But again, this is the consequence of the policies that we put in place, right? This is what happened. Okay, all right. So we're going to talk about Russia. We're going to talk about Russia. We're going to talk about Russia. That was a perfect segue. Thank you, General. That was a perfect segue. So, speaking of communism, speaking of Russians, speaking of Soviets, Russia. Russia has. Okay, so I don't know how to put this. I'll put it this way. I am not saying that Russia is invading Japan. I know that the title might make it sound that way. They are not invading Japan. That being said, Russians are occupying islands that Japanese are saying belong to them and have removed certain negotiating deals off the table and are not really looking to open up the discussion, if that makes sense. Now, here's the thing. Japan has a very, very, very strict self-defense force policy, which means that basically they are not allowed to engage in military action at all, essentially. I mean, they do have like their exceptions and they do try to, kind of get around their rules here and there. But yeah, basically they are limited. They're very limited. Self-limiting, but limited. And part of it was because Japan got a little too big in World War II, and then got cut down to size by Fat Man. Yeah, yeah. No. It does not mean that they can't declare war. It doesn't mean that they can't, but they are incredibly limited. There's something called, we'll actually probably look at that first. There is something in Japan called Article 9. It's been really hotly debated. 7 years, 4 years, 8 years, 1 year. You know what? This one looks like it'll probably be the best. We'll do this quick.
Japan.
So basically, they have a defense pact with the U.S. Yes, which is, after we made their god emperor admit that he wasn't a god over the radio. Well, yeah, we did do that. We did do that by completely removing 2 cities off the face of the planet. Like, just gone. Like, I think after that, he was like, if there is a god, he hates me. Because holy shit.
Has no military. What it has, the government insists.
Or a conservative. I am whatever I want to be. You can make the decision yourself.
Self-defense forces.
We'll talk about the sodas
Japan
later.
has $49 billion a year worth, more than all but 8 other countries. What? Officially, likewise.
Okay, wait. So this is the defense budgets. Wait, hold on. This is what I was talking about. Turkey might not spend as much, but they have about as much people. Like, I'd say they have as much people in the army as one of these top 3 countries, but they are definitely spending less than these countries.
Japan is staunchly opposed to any and all nuclear proliferation. Yet, in 2017, it refused to ratify a UN non-proliferation treaty.
True liberal, like everyone kind of
just... It also maintains a curiously large stockpile of plutonium. And America's nuclear weapons are...
Like, here's the thing. I feel like... I'm not... Alright, so liberal, conservative, whatever. Like, I'm not going to come at you for, the words you use. I'm coming at you for the messages that you are trying to put out. Right? Like, if you're using the words that are bad, like, I don't give a shit about that. Like, I swear all the time. I like what was that? They came out with that list. Who was it? That university came out with a list of like words that are inappropriate to use or like harmful or whatever, or toxic, whatever it was. Like, I get it. Yeah, maybe we could all change our language. Maybe we could all be a little better about the words we use, and maybe we'll hurt people's feelings a little less. But in a world where like you have both obesity and hunger, like, starvation and poverty, and also like ultra wealth, I think we've probably got bigger problems to worry about, you know? Like, I don't think you really need to focus too much on people's language when, like, you know, we literally just spent, like, had an hour looking at, like, people buried under rubble. I can use global firepower to compare Russia and Japan. Let's not. But yeah, you can.
Key component of its defense. Neither,
this
finally, does it build aircraft carriers. This, clearly, is only a helicopter destroyer. For the last 70 years, the world's now third largest economy has waged not a single war, nor fired a single shot in combat. In 1977, its prime minister labeled the nation's commitment to peace a historically unprecedented experiment. In a world where big country is synonymous with big military, Japan has somehow remained an almost singular beacon of hope and an alternative. But in the face of rising threats from neighboring China, North Korea, and Russia, many would argue it's only a matter of time before Japan becomes a, quote, normal country. Indeed, some would say it already has, in everything but name. The truth, however, is far more complicated. Sponsored by Morning Brew, the free daily newsletter that keeps you Constitution, General Douglas MacArthur made 3 initial demands, one of which prohibited the country from ever engaging in war, even for self-defense. Its continued existence would depend entirely on the protection of others. In the end, a slightly more ambiguous phrasing was adopted in the final draft of its constitution, known as Article 9. Quote, the Japanese people forever renounce war as a sovereign right of the nation. Land, sea, and air forces, as well as other war potential, will never be maintained. Note the omission of the words self-defense. Although the spirit of the Constitution remained as originally intended, its letter now left what would eventually become a $49 billion a year loophole.
Yeah, okay, so basically the way it was written makes it so that they can, in fact, have an army. They just can't be militaristic. You know, it's a really weird way to phrase it, but they do that on purpose. Like, this is literally like legalese 101. They're trying to make it vague so that they still have some wiggle room, and it's basically been up for debate for the past like 80 too many years? Let's say 60 years.
Perhaps the only surprise was just how quickly it was exploited. Less than 5 years after America
Never mind, they literally show it right here.
Wrote Japan's pacifist constitution, who pressured its militarization, but the Americans. The peace constitution came into effect in 1947. In 1949, the Communist Party took control of China, and the Korean War began in 1950. In only a matter of months, Japan went from being seen as an extreme threat that could only be suppressed with equally strong force to a valuable asset in the fight against communism. When US soldiers were sent to fight in Korea, Japan was left unprotected, leading to the creation of the 75,000-person National Police Reserve. Officially, the police reserve was not responsible for external security, thus not an army, and thus constitutional. Equipment.
See, there we go. That's how it starts. Oh my god, this is hilarious. Okay, all right, let's keep going.
Left by the US military, like tanks, were labeled with euphemisms like special vehicles. 2 years later, the police reserve became the safety force, which the prime minister insisted still had no war potential. And 2 years after that, it graduated to become the Japanese Self-Defense Forces, which have now survived decades of constitutional challenges. It would, however, be a mistake to call its armed forces a normal military in everything but name. While not weak, they are nevertheless severely constrained. They do not, for instance, benefit from conscription, and therefore struggle to fill positions. Neither can they possess certain offensive weapons like intercontinental ballistic missiles. It's fair to say that Japan has performed all kinds of mental and linguistic gymnastics in justifying things like its non-aircraft carrier, aircraft carrier. But it would also be an exaggeration to...
Yeah, that's literally what we're talking about. They're like, is that an aircraft carrier over there? No, it's just my boat that sometimes holds planes. Libtard.
To say that it can acquire any weapon or behave like any other military. It may stretch the limits, sometimes rather flagrantly, but there are still limits. Now, Article 9 could, in theory, be amended. Changing the Constitution requires 2/3 support in both houses of the Diet, its legislative body, plus a simple majority in a public referendum. But this has never been accomplished in its entire 74-year existence. It is, in fact, the world's oldest unchanged constitution. The real obstacle is not so much legal as it is cultural. To understand why, it helps to understand pacifism not as a value forced upon Japan by American occupiers, but as a product of the war itself. While the US may wish to claim responsibility, identifying the real cause is vital to measure its durability. Legal documents can change, but framing the issue only as a legal one distracts from the cultural impediment, which is much harder to change. Over 3 million Japanese lives were lost in World War II. 20% of all homes were destroyed. And, of course, it suffered from the only use of nuclear weapons on a human population in war. Faced with this immense psychological toll, it's said that Japanese society developed several coping mechanisms. First, the need to assign meaning to an otherwise senseless loss of life. And second, to preserve one's sense of innocence, the shifting of all blame onto the institution of the military. To resist militarization, in other words, was to recognize and learn from the past, while relieving oneself of agency, whether justified or not. In the decades since, Japan also came to associate peace with prosperity. Its economy swiftly recovered and brought with it a dramatic rise in quality of life.
Wow. Okay, I get what they're saying. So what they're saying is that they let go of Japan's military and freed up the budget to spend on other things. Essentially, they like what they're arguing is that the peacetime just kind of like brought the thing. Bro, do not get me started on PragerU, bro.
What keeps these principles alive so many years
Okay,
later
all right,
is, in large part, education. The teachers' union, for example, though less prominent than it once was, has resisted efforts to reform curriculum. Academia also acts as a strong check against militarization. In China, the line between academic and military is so often blurred that the American government can very easily find grounds to reject and sometimes harass nearly any Chinese academic. Most researchers around the world would have a hard time saying no to funding. In Japan, however, universities explicitly ban dual-use grants, civilian technologies which also have some military application. This deeply ingrained skepticism isn't confined to any single segment of society. Nearly every student has taken a field trip to one of the country's 76 peace museums, which are spread out across 32 prefectures. Over 74 million people in total have visited the—
What is this? Oh my god. Yeah, that's, at the end of the day, we pay for Europe and Asia's defense so they can all have their little bit of trash about us, but at the same time, like... What do you think is the most important day in U.S. history? That's a... Oh, wow, actually, that's a good question. I see what Leviticus means with July 4th, 1776. Let's see. Do you mean, like, what do you not... What? 20... What? July... What? Is that what? When Amerigo came and found the country? You guys keep throwing me off course. All right, hold on. So I get what Leviticus is saying about talking trash, blah, 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 blah. But at the same time, like...
170,000 U.S. military personnel are deployed overseas. Of them, about 60,000, or 35%, are stationed in Japan, more than any other country. In fact, only two, Germany and South Korea, even come close. And while this number has been slowly declining in most places, troop deployments in Japan are actually on the rise. Its islands are home to over 80 American bases, and the Navy's only forward-deployed aircraft carrier, USS Ronald Reagan. The U.S.-Japan alliance is among the strongest in the world. In the last century, Japanese leaders have made more state, official, and official working visits to the U.S. than any other ally. The public in both countries also overwhelmingly view the other favorably.
Bro, don't you know Jesus talked to the Mormons? That's how he did it. He like left his book under a tree in the middle of some field in Iowa or something. Most important day. By the way, if we're talking about Jesus, I always say, do what Jesus did. Walk into that temple, man. Flip those tables. Whip those priests. Do what he did.
71% of Japanese and 87% of Americans. Yet there has always been a fundamental sense of imbalance. The United States is unquestionably Japan's closest ally, but Japan is only one of many close American allies. One needs the other for its continued existence, whereas the other only wants the benefit of cooperation. For being friends, the two countries exchange a whole lot of money, leading many to wonder, who gets the better deal? Sponsored by CuriosityStream and Nebula, where you can watch this exchange for bases, which gave the American military a front row seat in Asia. It was agreed that Japan would provide all the facilities.
So again, this is part of... Yeah, I'm down for Japan. I'm an anime nerd. I'll do it. I'll geek out over anime. But what we're saying here is the United States gets to put bases in Japan. I think part of it is meant to be a check on the China situation, considering this was signed in 1952, which is right after the Chinese Communist Party took party. The Chinese Communist Party took power. So we are getting something from it, and on top of that, you know, North Korea, South Korea, all that stuff. But again, this is all the idea of like, letting one power become too powerful will eventually lead to international conflict. And that international conflict will sometimes get us involved too. How Japan's flew planes and the ships? We came over there. Yeah. I mean, oversimplifying it, but
while
yeah.
the US would pay for everything else. At the time, all this seemed perfectly fair. Japan, after all, was then completely devastated by the war. In fact, it could very easily be argued that as the victor, the US took advantage. As time went on, however, Japan only got richer and richer. So too did the yen gain in...
No, like here, this is something that one of my professors actually told me when I was back in college. We were studying World War II, looking at production capability, technological advancements, stuff like that. How essentially like wars are decided by stuff like that. How like certain countries can basically just produce more. They can repurpose more factories, do stuff like that. And one of the big things that he said led to World War II from World War I is that they didn't do what they did in World War II. They didn't come in and take the capital and basically like assure a smooth transition. It's a burden to take on. That's why the countries didn't decide to do it. That's why the Allies back in World War I didn't do that to Germany. That's why they let it slide when Germany started to slip on the payments and didn't just suddenly, start arming up for war. That's why they didn't suddenly start up a new war when he took Alsace-Lorraine and, and started to become this whole, like, will he, won't he business. It's a calculated cost. They are looking at how much do we gain from causing trouble? How much do we lose from enforcing our rules? And we don't always make the right one. I'm sure that these decisions are happening all the time, every day, in every part of the world. But, we don't always make the right one. Here, what we did in Japan is we said they became very powerful. Literally, Japan is a really funny story because Japan, what ended up happening with Japan was they were super isolationist, and then at some point they started opening up to the world. When they did, they sent their students basically as like spies to every other country to learn about the world, stuff that they hadn't figured out yet in Japan, being a small island. And then they came back, they brought all that knowledge back to Japan. They started teaching it in Japan, and then Japan just took off. Like they just took that knowledge and just blasted off to the moon. But here, let's keep going.
The circumstances had changed dramatically, yet the deal had not. And so, under pressure from the Americans, in 1978, Japan began making payments above and beyond what was required by the treaty. Because these payments were designed to demonstrate understanding for the costs, monetary and otherwise, shouldered by the Americans, they became known as the sympathy budget. The US prefers the term host nation support. While making clear this was completely voluntary, Japan built new facilities, paid their utilities, and covered the salaries of its citizens who worked in them. Then, two things happened which raised concerns of loyalty. First, Japan refused to help secure the Persian Gulf during the Iran-Iraq War, despite being explicitly asked to do so by the US. And second, Toshiba was caught around the same time selling military technology to the Soviets. The country was at serious risk of being seen as a bad ally. It knew...
They knew Pearl Harbor was a bad move. They just did it anyways. They knew it was a bad move. They trust me. They knew. They just went for it. It was a matter of pride at some point. It was really bad. Like they knew it was a bad idea. They had already talked with their allies and knew it was a bad idea. They just didn't think it through.
It had to do something. That something turned out to be formalizing the previously voluntary annual payments into contracts, called Special Measure Agreements, to be renegotiated every 5 years. Japan's contributions climbed immediately to a new high. In the 40 years between 1978 and 2016, Japan paid something like $65 billion in...
Okay, this is what I have been saying, and this is what I've been trying to say. The military-industrial complex is exporting war, right? Like, that's what we do. Like, we have it. We're the biggest producers of guns. What do you do with them? You got to sell them. You got to move. That's product. You don't just sit on your product. You got to move your product. So this is where the money's coming from. This is who's paying for the bases here. $65 billion over 30 years. Like that's a chunk of change. That's a hefty chunk of change. So again, this is renegotiated with the United States every 5 years. they have to figure it out. They have to pay whatever. But what I'm saying is, this is not us paying them. This is them paying us for us to leave our military there because we forced them not to have a military.
Total for U.S. forces, with an average increase of 17% a year. In 2019, it contributed roughly $3.16 billion to the U.S. military when everything from labor to utilities, the cost to relocate training exercises away from civilian populations, and facility upgrades are included. But what do these numbers really mean, you may wonder? In 2017, Japanese politicians claimed the country shoulders 86% of the total cost to station U.S. troops there. The Pentagon came up with 74% in 2004. Other sources go as low as 50%. Whatever the true figure, it's higher than South Korea, around 40%, or Germany, 32%. None of these numbers...
Ah, look at that! Hold on. Well, let's bring the chart back without the subtitles.
True figure, it's higher...
Okay, so Japan says they paid 86. The Pentagon said they paid 74. Clearly someone's lying.
In South Korea, around 40%. Or...
Japan's paying for 50. Wait, what? Wait, what?
2004. Other sources go as low as 50%. Whatever the...
Okay, these are other sources. This is just like whoever else came up with this number. Okay, so this is Japan's share of costs of U.S. troops in Japan. So, Japan says 86%, probably a little higher than it is. The Pentagon says 74%. I'd say it's somewhere in between the two, but apparently they're saying 50%.
The true figure,
so let's see what
in
happens.
South Korea, around 40%, or Germany, 32%. None of these numbers, however, are complete. Many contributions simply can't be quantified. These include things like indirect subsidies, the infrastructure around bases like roads, wage taxes and fees, and quite substantially, the rents that could have been collected from the land occupied by bases. Last but not least, Japan buys nearly all its defense equipment from the US. The biggest sacrifice made by the Japanese...
What did I say? We export war. That's our business. Why do you think every time that they try to cut the military budget, everybody starts throwing a fit? It's because this is our business. This is our livelihood, man. That's what we do in America. We sell guns. That's it. That's our business. This is our money. Do not cut my income.
His government, however, is not monetary, but political. Politicians are caught between two very powerful forces. On one side is the public, who overwhelmingly opposes militarization. Anything resembling an expansion of the military will be met with intense scrutiny. No party, no matter how popular, can afford to ignore the will of voters on this issue, which means very carefully tiptoeing around the entire subject of defense. In 2015, for instance, Shinzo Abe passed a security law allowing the military to protect its allies under certain circumstances, in addition to self-defense. A right so basic and universal that...
Right. So here's the other part of this. We basically told them, hey, Japan, back us up. You got to fight with us. After having told them explicitly that they were never allowed to do war again. Like, we told them that they weren't allowed to do war and then said, yo, back me up, man. Back me up. Come behind me. Back me up. Like, what were we expecting? I know. We've been selling them guns. We've been leaving our soldiers there to defend them. We've been letting them, do what they're going to do. But, like, we told them never to do war again. You can't, that's like literally telling someone, hey, man, you're an alcoholic. You can't drink. Like, it's done. Like, honestly, like, it's a problem. And then, like, a few years later being like, hey, man, come to my bachelor's party. It's an open bar. Here, have a shot. Have a shot with me. Here, have like 6 shots with me. Fuck it. Let's do shots. Like, no, you don't do that, right? Like, you don't do that. You gotta be respectful. Now, at the same time, allies, man, you gotta come help us. But we imposed this condition on them, and then they just responded with the same thing that they do. I am not going to say that they have never used the military, though. I know that they have. They've used their military for certain things. They've done it in legal gray areas for themselves. But, there is this, like, expectation of, like, where do you draw that line? Is it the Gulf War? Is it, Hokkaido? I don't know. We'll find out. So let's see.
Enshrined in the United Nations Charter. For this, he paid dearly, as you can clearly see in this graph of approval rating. On one day alone, 300 protests were staged across the country, the largest of which attracted 120,000 people. Shinzo Abe's relative success in politics came to...
Wait, 2014? Oh boy. Oh, look at him in 2017.
His perceived hawkishness, not because of it.
He got shot in 2018, I think. 2017.
In the run-up to elections, he would cleverly shift focus to the economy, only turning to defense after he had won.
Look at that. Anime everywhere. Told you.
On the
See, this is what Japan exports. Japan's actually, interestingly enough, Japan actually does export culture a lot. We do too. We have Hollywood. Hollywood is our way of exporting culture. I mean, like, you know, Disney gets to put their movies in every movie theater in the world, right? But Japan famously has been exporting culture with their anime and actually take it over like a lot. Same with, like, you know, PlayStations, Nintendo, like they export culture all the time. And that's what they do. This is wild though.
The other side is the United States. In America, where no equivalent peace culture exists, Japan's unwillingness to expand the size and role of its military is not some noble commitment to pacifism, but somewhere between greedy and dangerous.
See, this is what I'm saying. See, here we are so attached to war that literally they said, but when you look at America, it's not about improving the economy and lowering their, you know, addiction to war. It's seen as being dangerous and reckless and greedy. Like, what?
Many would like for it to take on a greater share of the financial burden for the sake of fairness. Others, including much of the foreign policy establishment, see Japan as relying too heavily on the US at the expense of its own military, and ultimately the security of the entire Asia-Pacific region. Thus, Japanese politicians must carefully balance these two forces, in the short term satisfying the demands of voters or else losing power, while simultaneously meeting the rising long-term expectations of its ally or else losing its sole source of protection. This tension came to a head during the First Gulf War. In December 1990, the US ambassador called the Japanese prime minister on the phone, asking a long-standing ally for support against the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait. But doing so was deemed unconstitutional. In one poll, just 1/3 of respondents supported sending forces, though with one hilarious condition, that they not be armed. In the end,
what were they gonna do? I mean, I guess... What were they gonna do? Why would you send people to a war without weapons? I mean, were they supposed to be like medical help? I don't understand.
And Japan refused. Only after a ceasefire was announced did it send 6 small vintage wooden minesweeping ships. Even this was controversial back home. The international community was furious. Instead of sending forces, Japan contributed cash, $13 billion, or 20% of the total cost, though it stipulated the money could only be used for non-lethal purposes. Yet with 0 casualties to the US's over 100, it didn't sit right.
Woohoo! Oh, they were pissed. Oh,
Japan was accused of checkbook diplomacy, paying money to dodge its obligations rather than doing the...
Okay, but see, again, I understand where Japan's coming from. They have decided on peace, and now they have to find a way to do it. You know, and that's asking a lot. That's asking a lot, especially of these crazy, you know, like war hungry nations. Like, you know, like that's hard. That's a hard line to draw, because like on the one hand, yeah, that's what I'm saying. They are so dedicated to peace that they were willing to send soldiers without weapons, which I'm assuming means that they would have been, I don't know, driving vehicles, maybe medical staff, maybe they're like radar and like connected to like the tech sector. Like I'm not like, I know there are positions that are not, you know, frontline soldier, like, you know, whatever, but at the same time, that's asking a lot to just send out like troops, but essentially not send out troops. You know, like none of them would be armed. Like what was that ridiculous business? And yeah, they sent the minesweeper, but like again, the other countries sent armies with weapons. But this is the logical consequence of having chosen this path. Is like, and I think that's the problem that that's the debate they're having. They're saying like, we are either a nation that has renounced war or we're not. And so, like, if we are not a nation that has renounced war, then let's, actually war with guns and weapons and death and everything. And if we're not, then let's not in every way possible, which is part of the reason why they're in such deep shit right now. So I think we're going to cut it here. I think we understand now what's going on with the U.S. bases in Japan. The problem is this going to talk about it? No, this is talking about Balashikov. All right, so the problem is, boom.
This is a country which has many, many territorial disputes with many of their neighbors. The most infamous of these disputes that we've all been paying attention to recently are the ones with Ukraine. Russia claims the Crimean Peninsula, which they annexed from Ukraine in 2014. The Russian president has questioned Ukraine's entire right to independence, and the Russian armed forces are currently invading and occupying large amounts of the country's territory. And while this dispute is certainly the largest and the most hostile of the Russian government, it is far from the only one. For thousands of miles away across to the other side of Eurasia, there is another brewing just beneath the surface in the headlines between Russia and Japan over the status of these 4 islands, all 4 of which are currently ruled from Moscow, but claimed intensely by Tokyo as their so-called northern territories.
All right, so again, apparently these islands here, even though Hokkaido's right here, and that should technically be part of them, Russia is saying this is all ours. So apparently these islands are just being occupied right now. And I don't know if that's like a good staging point. I don't know what that is, but it's just another example of them being pushy with their borders.
Currently ruled from Moscow, but claimed intensely by Tokyo as their so-called northern territory.
You know what Russia needs? Russia needs a consent class. Like a class on consent. Just like, no means no. You gotta respect people's boundaries. Like, come on.
2 weeks following the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida declared that these 4 islands are a territory peculiar to Japan, and a territory in which Japan has sovereignty. And then the following day, the Japanese Foreign Minister Yoshimasa Hayashi declared the islands as an integral part of Japan. And it's not like they just came out of the blue and claimed these islands for themselves after Russia suddenly became distracted with a war over in Europe. The Japanese government has been claiming these islands for decades, and for nearly 80 years now, both them and the United States government have considered these islands as Russian-occupied territory of Japan. And even more insane is that because they consider these islands occupied, the Japanese and Russians have never, in nearly 80 years, actually got around to signing a formal peace treaty ending World War II between them, which means that, legally speaking, the Second World War is still ongoing between Russia and Japan over the status of these tiny islands. And in
so this is World War 2.5?
Japan's economic sanctions following the invasion of Ukraine, Russia has announced that they're now fully withdrawing from all of the
So he was right. He was right. There was a soldier that was camped out in an island in the Philippines, I think, or like Southeast Asia, and he lived in the jungles for a long time, and he said World War II wasn't over. I didn't believe him. I didn't know. Guys, I didn't know. I didn't know. Oh, shit.
peace treaty talks with Japan that have been going on for nearly 80 years now. So, what is it about these tiny little islands between them that they each consider so valuable? Why have they prevented peace between them for this long? And who, between them, is actually the rightful controller?
Wait, so these 4 belong to Japan, but this one's fine. Is that what we're saying? Like this one here on the right, this one way over here, that one is actually Russian, so that one doesn't count. Like, did we just give up on that one, or what? What is happening here?
In order to answer those questions, we have to rewind the clock back a bit to the mid-19th century. Back at that time, Japan was just coming out from a period of more than 2.5 centuries of near complete isolation from the outside world, and was just moving settlers and soldiers into the northern territories of Hokkaido and the Kuril Island chain, while simultaneously, the Russian Empire's own settlers and soldiers were encroaching onto the shores of the northern Pacific, Sakhalin Island, and the Kuril Islands as well. Formal diplomatic relations between the Russian Empire and the Tokugawa shogunate of Japan were first made back in 1855, largely as a way to resolve their conflicting colonial interests in the Kurils. As a result, they signed the Treaty of Shimoda, which divided the Kuril Islands across this line, with the Russians controlling all of the islands to the north and the Japanese controlling the 4 islands to the south, which they called Etorofu, Kunashiri, Shikotan, and the Habamai Islands, the 4 that are currently under dispute today. At the same time, the treaty stated that the nearby Sakhalin or Karafuto Island would not be partitioned between them, and would be jointly ruled as a Russian-Japanese condominium.
Okay, that's a bad call. That's just saying like, hey, we can't figure it out now, so let's just put that off till later when we just war it out.
Then, 20 years later after...
And by the way, this is the 1800s, so there was definitely, let's just war it out, because back then, war was just like that fun thing you did and then came back and said that you were a hero, you know? Like, I cannot stress this enough. When World War I came around, it literally changed the game. They had automated weapons, not like fully automatic, but like, you know, as close as you can get back in the day. And it changed the game because before that, people like took their time. It was a slow, painful ordeal. It's part of the reason why, like, if you've ever seen the movie The Patriot with Mel Gibson, he beats all the British by guerrilla tactics, basically just hiding in the woods, like roaming around, da 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 da. Yeah, that was part of what won us the war, is that we had an innovation. We innovated on war because we didn't just stand in front of them and get shot a million times. But these innovations changed, and when they finally got to World War II is when World War I and World War II is when we said, hey, war is not the fun, cool thing that it used to be. Maybe we should reconsider this. Because like before then, like, yeah, people got hurt. Most people died from infections, but like, you know, it was the fun thing you did. I mean, Britain and France did it for 100 years for what? Fun. That's what they do. Like, no, there are more serious reasons, but still, you know, that's my point. Like, war changed, and when war changed, some people decided, oh, I can't do that anymore. Specifically, Japan.
After that treaty in 1875, Russia and Japan came to a new agreement in the Treaty of St. Petersburg. They basically agreed that Russia would gain full control of Sakhalin in exchange for Japan gaining full control over all of the Kuril Islands.
Shit! So they got all these? That's a lot.
To right off of the Kamchatka Peninsula in the Russian mainland, which for reasons I'll get into later, was an absolutely terrible trade for Japan. So far, though, all of these territories had been agreed to through means of peace and diplomacy. But that would all change at the beginning of the 20th century. Russia and Japan's territorial ambitions and goals were beginning to cross over each other at just too many places. The Russians didn't have any ports of their own on the Pacific that remained ice-free during the winter, locking down their naval and trade capabilities across the entire coastline for the whole season. Thus, the Russians were attempting to expand towards warmer waters into Manchuria and Korea, and managed to acquire a lease from the Qing dynasty on Port Arthur in China's Liaodong Peninsula, which crucially did remain ice-free even during the winter. Unfortunately for them, the Japanese at the time were also seeking to expand their own empire into this exact direction as well. Japan initially offered a compromise similar to the one that they had made with Russia earlier over Sakhalin and the Kurils. Russian control over Manchuria in exchange for Japanese control over Korea. But this time, Russia refused and offered only a division of Korea with Japan across the 39th parallel, just 1 degree north of what would ultimately become the dividing line between North and South Korea today. Japan refused and decided to launch a surprise attack against the Russian Navy anchored in Port Arthur, which began the 18-month-long Russo-Japanese War. Despite all hope of victory over Japan dissolving within months, the Tsar continued on the war anyway in order to avoid suffering what he called a humiliating peace. In 1905, the war was finally concluded with a decisive Japanese victory by the Treaty of Portsmouth, which ceded the southern half of Sakhalin over to Japan, among other things. Over the next 4 decades, hundreds of thousands of Japanese colonists migrated into the southern half of Sakhalin from the Japanese main islands, and the Japanese Empire initiated a rapid series of military conquests across the rest of Asia and the Pacific. But peace with Russia, for the most part,
this is too much of a
well
banger for
maintained.
this part.
This was...
They're literally talking about Japanese invading China, and there are some real horror stories to that, but that was a banger beat. Damn.
However, controversial within Japan itself. At the time, pre-World War II, the fascist Japanese government largely debated between two different aggressive foreign policy choices. A northern expansion doctrine advocating for an invasion and conquest of the Soviet Union's far eastern...
Seriously, that has no right to be the banger that it is. What is happening right now?
Lands largely promoted by the Japanese army, or a southern expansion doctrine advocating for an invasion and conquest of the western colonial possessions across the Pacific and Southeast Asia.
Yeah, so this is also what made World War II so hard, is that they were spread out amongst these islands and others over here, and that made it so that to get to them, you basically had to take out this chain of islands first. You know, and as everybody knows, geography is not your friend when it comes to war, unless you're talking about self-defense. But islands, having this massive bit of water, terrible to invade. Mountains, terrible to cross. Like, you just can't get over some of those.
Largely promoted by the Japanese Navy. Before a decision either way had been reached, millions of Japanese and Soviet soldiers faced each other across the frontier of Japanese-occupied Manchuria and the Russian Far East, anticipating each other's moves and occasionally coming to blows. But in April of 1941, the Japanese and the Soviets signed a 5-year-long non-aggression pact, and then, just 3 months later after that, the Western Allies and United States imposed a total oil embargo on Japan. This action was critical for influencing the course of world events, because the Japanese home islands are incredibly barren of fossil fuel energy resources like oil or gas, and at the time of the war, more than 80% of Japan's oil consumption was being imported. Without the oil, Japan's war machine running in China would have quickly run out of fuel, and so they...
Sorry, before we keep going with this, I do want to say one thing. And again, I know that the Japanese committed a lot of atrocities during this war. I'm not trying to excuse that. What I am trying to say is that they had a growing population and basically just a bunch of rice fields. Here, okay, it's not like a racist thing. Like, they literally like dedicated a lot of their agriculture to growing a single crop. It was not the greatest idea, but at the same time, they had an expanding population and relatively small land for, you know, what they had. So they wanted to expand here to have basically land to farm and essentially survive. They got greedy and then kept going and going and going, and they basically said, hey, you know, let's just keep going until someone stops me. The Japanese Empire could have just stopped like here, and they probably would have been able to maintain that for a while. But the United States chose to help China in this, because we supported their, I want to say, more democracy type leader. I will not say that he was like that, because, you know, again, it's the early 1900s. There were a lot of not so great people. So we backed the Chinese leader here, right? We said, we'll come to your aid. We will rescue Manchuria. We will push the evil Japanese back. And we did. And we pushed them back, and we pushed them back, and we pushed them back, and we pushed them back until, you know, again, they were just in this island. But then, right after we helped basically free this place, the Chinese just said, fuck it, we like communism better. And they just did a quick little 180 on us. And then suddenly we had to come crawling back to Japan and say, hey, listen, I know we just like wiped out 2 of your cities and, you know, did whatever, but why don't we join hands and fight those communist Chinese together? You know, again, we didn't actually fight the Chinese, but we did put countermeasures on Japan against Chinese communism. Like that's just true. But anyways, little history lesson, just, you know, the U.S. backed China essentially for having a more democracy-loving leader. They lost that leader within like 10 years. Then boom. Yeah, I mean, it's hard. It's hard to tell. It's hard to make that decision. Like, I'm not gonna say that it would have been better off to Japanese. But the way I see it, in World War II, the Japanese were fucking unstoppable. And the only reason why they did stop is because we showed them a level of destruction that just could not be matched. Like, that was the whole point. We did something so atrocious that literally made it impossible to do war. Like, I think what ended up happening is they had to blow up 2 cities. I think after the first one, the emperor said, well, what are the chances they have 2 of those, like, god weapons? And then they took out another city, and he immediately went, nope, I'm sorry. I did not realize that we were fighting demons. I thought it was humans, oof. I didn't realize there was going to be magic involved in this fight. Like, goddamn. Why didn't they let Japan keep that land exactly like it is on the screen? Yeah, again, this is probably more than they should have had, honestly. But, I mean, Korea's not, like, that bad. They probably could have kept Korea, right? Like, I don't know. Look, again, it's not up to me to decide international politics like that, but like, fun fact, they were supposed to be cities. They're supposed to be, hey, thanks for commenting, by the way. They're supposed to be military infrastructure, but weather made a change of plan. Yeah, no, I mean, again, this easy could have been like, let's put some like cities here, let's da-da-da-da-da-da, and yeah, no, it just became military outposts is what all this was, But again, if we had been able to just kind of make a deal here, we would have been okay. It would have been, I don't know. I don't know if it would have gone down like that now that I really think about it. Japan was, again, wrecking shit as a military. Like, they were just destroying everything.
They ultimately decided to attack using the Southern Expansion Doctrine towards the islands of the Dutch East Indies, modern-day Indonesia, which at the time were known.
Oh, you were referring to Harrison. Oh. Oh. God. Oh, that makes it so much worse. Because the military, like, I think I would have been fine bombing a military infrastructure. Oh no, man. What? Like, that's the thing, because it was a civilian target, and that's such a disgusting thing to do. Like, as much as we won, and the results are there, and they can speak for themselves, like, civilian target is like, it really is disgusting. Like, it was like we were looking at the Turkey stuff earlier today with the earthquakes and everything, and I keep saying, like, gore is one thing, but when you see they're part of the industrial, they were valid targets. That's not how that works, man. Like, that's not how that works. Like, I get what you're saying. They could have been producing weapons, they could have been producing bullets, whatever, but like, it's just not the same, man. Like, these are families, these are people going to school, these are people going to their work. Like, it's like, oh man. The lowest population within range. Yeah, again, they were making a statement. It was a statement, and they were making it, and they made it. And there has been peace ever since, right? Right, guys? Like, right? Like, there's peace, right? We're all good, right? That solved everything.
To have large numbers of oil reserves. Little did they know at the time that some of the largest oil reserves in the entire world were actually, in fact, located just to the north on the island of Sakhalin, an island of...
Oh, it would have been so much easier to take that. Oh, no. We told them why they would... we literally just dropped pamphlets. Like, that's all we did. We dropped a few pamphlets and we told them, get out. Like, let's put it this way. If somebody flew above you, dropped a bunch of pamphlets and said, get out or die, Would you leave? Just like a pamphlet from the skies? Again, like, we're not talking about Japan back in the days when they like didn't know anything, but like, no, there was not for the people. No, they literally, like, they talk about it. They literally got pamphlets from the sky. Hold on. Yeah, it was leaflets. Literally leaflets like this. It was this. They just dropped these, and it literally was like a little message that said, "America asks that you take immediate heed of what we say on this leaflet. We are in possession of the most destructive explosion ever devised by man. A single one is actually the equivalent in explosive power to what 2,000 of our giant." Wow, that's terrible. That is terrible. Uy, 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 uy. Yeah, but their government was at war with us. They're not supposed to believe everything we say. They're not supposed to sit there and be like, "Oh, they said they have the biggest bomb in the world. Well, I told them that we have the biggest bomb in the universe." Ugh. Like, like, they're not going to sit there and take you at your word. Like, even if they had spies, they didn't know the full extent of everything. Like, literally. And again, it comes down to there were people there, families, like whole, like, lives being lived. Like, there's a word for it. Have you ever sat at like a park, a beach, whatever, and you look around and you say like, "Wow, look at all these people," and then you have this realization that every single one of those people has a life just as detailed and intricate and involved as yours, where you're like, wow, that person probably like, got up today, made some coffee, went to like take a shower, pet their cat, said bye to their wife, like da 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 da. That's a city full of those people that the only warning they essentially got was literally just a pamphlet being dropped on them from the sky, like just flying down and then being like, "Oh, what's this? It says I should leave in 48 hours, but they told me not to worry, so I still got to go to work tomorrow. Like, just because they left this pamphlet doesn't mean I don't have work. I don't know. I'll probably be fine." Like, that's probably how the conversation went in most of their heads. He's probably like, all right, whatever. Boom, that. And then literally just wiped off the face of the planet. Now, again, I'm not trying to say that the results weren't there, but, yes, we do horrible things to each other, but at the same time, no. Soldiers flew those planes into them. Like, that's not like, that's not how it works. And we gave them a way out if we would have surrendered. Yes, but again, if you look at their culture, like, they never would have surrendered. That's why we dropped the bombs, because we knew they weren't going to surrender. Again, I know that atrocities happen. I know that the results speak for themselves. But again, when I'm talking about Japan, especially after World War II and their dedication to peace, like, they have to deal with some of the like harder questions, which is, how do you resolve an international conflict without war? Right? How do you actually manage to defend yourself without also murdering your opponent? It's a difficult little line there that they chose to take on. I mean, not entirely. It was kind of forced on them, but they are doing their best to see what is the logical conclusion of that. That means if they gave us no other choice, what do we have to do? We need to have to drop 2 bombs because of their culture. I mean, did we have no other choice? Or was it just that we didn't want to spend more time trying to find another solution? And that's the questions that we have to ask ourselves. Again, I'm not trying to erase history. Like, it's already happened. It's already done. But dropping a bomb on a civilian population is now one of the worst things that we could think of. It's completely inexcusable, and it would cause international backlash, right? I mean, that's part of why we're all so upset about Ukraine, is because, again, it's an army basically entering into a civilian area, right? This is a city. It's not, it's like, again, like, what do you think Nagasaki was like before the bomb? Like this is just a city. Like, it's just like a thing. It's just a place. Like, look at this. This is just a residential area. This is like a downtown. This is like a downtown shopping district. Then gone. This is a little river with, like, you know, restaurants, city, like, gone. You know, like, this is not gone. Jeez. A church, whatever. Like, maybe there were some factories, but like, no, I'm saying the factory is fine. The city is not. Right? Like, I'm saying, like, if your factory is producing missiles, yeah, you could get shot and that factory could be blown up and whatnot. But the city, the schools, the kids, like, no. Like, look at this. Look at this street. How many weapons do you think they built on this street? How many bombs were built here? How many warships? You know, like, how many bullets were made here on this street? What about down here by the coast? Right? Like, do we see warships here? Yeah, yep. There's like one or two. Yeah, right here in the harbor. You could take those ships out. You want me to look up why they thought those are valid targets? Boom. Why were Hiroshima and Nagasaki chosen? Contained military forces and military factories. The area was flat terrain extending in all directions. Therefore, Hiroshima's topography and size were optimal for testing the destructive power of the atomic bomb and for verifying its effectiveness after the bombing. Okay. But again, this does not erase what I said. There's still schools there. There's still people living there. It's still families. It's still, like, you don't just erase an entire city for having like one or two or even 5 factories. Now, here we go. Nagasaki. Some say Nagasaki was chosen for the target because the Mitsubishi shipyard, which built 2 of Japan's largest battleships. However, Nagasaki was chosen for the third bombing because its population was much smaller than those of Hiroshima and Kokura, which was the second target. Also, a prisoner of war camp was there. So what, did we kill the prisoners of war too? Fat Man, because of the bombings, differences, blah, blah, blah. Why Tokyo was not selected. Tokyo was not selected because it'd be more difficult to end the war because they needed someone to negotiate with. I mean, yeah, I think I am saying that. I'm saying that a school is not a valid target. I'm saying that if a family lives there, it's not a valid target. You should not be involving non-combatants into your war. I am not trying, like, I feel like you're fighting me on, like, why an atomic bomb was dropped on Japan. I understand why the bomb was dropped, right? I understand that they did a cost to benefit analysis and they said the benefit outweighs the cost, right? And they did it. What I am saying is that today you would not do that because it is reprehensible. And on top of that, what I'm saying is that now we are coming up with ways that would literally kill people from like an entirely different side of the planet and only the people you want to kill. Like, look, they weren't going to surrender before the bomb dropped. I've explained why they were doing what they did. I've also explained that the military got out of hand and they went a little too expansionist, but again, what they wanted to do was find land that they could use to basically feed their population, which was out of control. They went about it through aggressive and, in some cases, atrocious methods. But again, we wiped 2 cities off the face of the map. That's just not something that you can, like, gloss over. And as much as we can say that there may have been military personnel there and stuff like that, like, it's gone. You know, like everybody was gone. Not just the military, not just the bases, everything. Like, like, again, if you blow up planes, fine. Tanks, fine. If you blow up the base where all the people are, it gets harder to distinguish it. But it's not just about blowing up the base. It's about blowing up the specific places where the combatants are. And the more information that we get, especially in this information age, the easier it becomes to literally kill your target. Just your target. Not anybody else. I mean, we literally got Al-Qaeda's number 2 with like a drone that shoots razor blades out. We killed him on his balcony from literally across the planet. Like we can do better and we should do better. I'm not saying that they could do better then. They did their best. They tried. But we are very far removed from that. We're literally facing like 80 years past this. Like I think we'll hit 80 years in like 2 or 3. But we can do better. We've come a long way. So again, I understand why in Japan they bombed them. I understand that there was no better alternative. But what I'm saying is, all right, so this is what I'm saying. If I was attacked, if I was being attacked, if I was I don't know, jogging and somebody came to rob me, I might kill that person in Minecraft. Because I am not strong enough to apprehend them and assure my safety as well as theirs. And I'm admitting that as that is a personal flaw of mine, because I try to dedicate myself to peace, but I understand that I am limited because I cannot possibly save them and myself. And it's one of those things where like I've just come to that conclusion. Like it would be hard for me to be able to save myself and also hurt them. That is the conclusion that we came to in Japan. We said, unfortunately, we have to hurt them because there's no way for us to remain safe without doing this. There's no way to save our soldiers without annihilating these people. But now we are in a different world. We have like many more options, to the point where you could literally just take out the leader of a country with a drone. Would there be resistance? Sure. Would it cause like international problems? Sure. But we can just take out the people responsible. We don't have to involve civilians. We do anyways, because again, we're just not all the way there yet, but we need to be better and we're trying to do better. Yep. Oof. Yeah. Again, this is peacetime. It's different, but the question is still there. Where like when I say Japan has a like self-defense force and they're not getting involved in wars, and here where we're saying that they got 0 casualties on the screen, like that's why. It's because they are dedicating themselves to the idea that war is reprehensible, and they are trying their best to really commit to that idea, the idea that they are renouncing war. They still have a self-defense force. They haven't let it go completely, but there are people there that are just constantly trying to hold them accountable to the whole, like, you said we're not going to war, so why are we making bullets? You said we're not going to war, so why are we building battleships? Why are we, etc. It's a hard line. It's a really hard line. And I don't expect any of these people to really be able to, again, like I said, save themselves and also neutralize the threat. It's the same problem that I have with people that are really like against police, which is that like I understand that there are some cases where the police will just not be able to guarantee both their safety and the safety of the person that they're chasing, or whatever it is. I do think that they are too quick on that to make that decision, but I think a lot of that is because they get a lot of fear-based training, which is basically just focused on like your life is in danger every day that you work this job. But it's a dangerous job, and they also have to be aware of stuff like that. They will buy. I don't know. I don't know what's gonna happen. But let's see. Let's see what happens.
On the line.
So
In
let's.
truth, its assistance was far from necessary.
Wait. All right. So we got this. We know who pays for the U.S. bases in Japan, I think.
Increasingly demand more from its allies. And while accusations of unfairness reached a fever pitch during the Trump presidency, they are by no means new. Whoever the president and whatever the global circumstances, Japan faces the same basic dilemma. Public opposition prevents it from ever taking control of its own defense destiny. Yet, only one country can fill this hole, the United States. In short, Japan has one option, and one option only. Who wouldn't be anxious? If it
Again, I totally get this.
were ever threatened with war, it would have no choice but to hope for protection by the US.
Yeah, because their own public is so against them having a military that they literally don't have one, except for the self-defense force. But the self-defense force is really, really just underfunded, underdeveloped, poorly maintained. I mean, not entirely. They are also trying their hardest. You know, like they're doing what they can. It's just that like the limitations that are built into the government keep them from properly being able to do what they're what they would need to do in wartime. Anyways, let's move on. The point of this was to go into Hokkaido and Japan and this whole business here. So hold on.
Japan or the Soviets known about these reserves back at the time, it could have heavily influenced their military's decision-making into pursuing the northern expansion strategy into the Soviet Union instead, with unpredictable alternate history. But that's not how things went. Instead, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor and went to war against America, Britain, and the other Western allies, while the Soviet Union fought on against Nazi Germany and Europe. But they
again, so they could have just taken a little bit from Russia and possibly gotten away with it, but no, they got greedy. They attacked us. They
never directly engaged each other.
So let's move on
until the
past World
final
War II.
moments of the war. The non-aggression pact that they had signed was supposed to last until the 6th of April, 1946. But in April of 1945, as the Red Army was closing in on Berlin and Europe, the Soviets suddenly renounced the pact. And then, just 2 days after the United States dropped the first atomic bomb on Hiroshima in August, the Soviet Union formally declared war on Japan and launched a full-scale invasion into Japanese-occupied Manchuria, Korea, the southern half of Sakhalin, and the Kuril Islands. Japan announced their surrender just 1 week after the Soviet declaration of war. But then, 3 days after that, the Soviets began their amphibious invasion of the Kuril Islands. Japan formally signed peace on the 2nd of September, but by that point, the entirety of Sakhalin and the Kuril Islands had come under Soviet occupation. All of the hundreds of thousands of Japanese settlers in these territories were subsequently forcefully deported by the Soviets back to the Japanese mainland, and hundreds of
Okay, so I see why they're debating this. All right, so now at this point, this is Russian.
thousands of mostly Russian and Ukrainian settlers have since moved in to replace them in the decades that have followed.
That's really funny that Ukrainian settlers are here too. But,
Now,
okay,
this is all where the source of the modern conflict over the 4 islands claimed by both sides begins. Let's start off with Japan's perspective. Japan cites the ambiguity of the language used in various World War II-era documents and statements as backing up their rightful claims to the islands. Specifically, the Cairo Declaration of 1943 made by the Allies, which reads, verbatim, Japan shall be stripped of all the islands in the Pacific which she has seized or occupied since the beginning of the First World War in 1914. As well as this quote, Japan will also be expelled from all other territories which she has taken by violence and greed. Japan's legal team would like to point out that the Kuril Islands specifically are not covered by the demands of this declaration, seeing as how Japan peacefully negotiated their control from Russia in 1875.
Okay, so see, this is a good point. I don't see this whole China-Japan thing going anywhere. Japan can't attack unless China and U.S. go to war. China can't attack. Yep. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. No. You're right. You're right. If anything, right now we're concerned about these islands that Russia's claiming. Sanctions on Beijing alone would economically cripple China. Yeah, I think that's why they're playing it careful, because they don't want the international community coming after them. You know, if they had a crackdown, I mean, really the problem is, like, where else do you get your products from? Like, everything was made in China, right? And I think a lot of other countries are also facing that issue where they're like, oh, where are we going to get everything from? But it would just be reshifting our focus. We just have to put a little more attention into getting stuff that's locally made. You know, and with economic sanctions on China, like, they'd be fine. Yep, I know. That's what we do most of the time. We're huge sellers of rice to China.
Before the First World War, and
And
even
that's
further
why.
back settled the 4 islands under
Because we
dispute
gotta
back
keep
in the
some
1855 Shimoda Treaty
good
with
trade
Russia.
going.
These 4 islands were
Some
never taken by violence and greed, and should
semi-peaceful.
therefore have never been taken from Japan. Further, the Potsdam Declaration made by the Allies later on.
Speaking of which, a lot of people are getting rid of not rice, fertilizer products. Yes, sorry, you're right. Yes, you're right. It's fertilizer products that they grow with the rice. Yes, thank you for that. But yeah, actually, a lot of countries have started to take out. Actually, I think it's Australia said recently that they have actually removed their cameras. Australia actually just got rid of their China-made cameras that are in defense departments, anything like that, because they're getting worried. They're getting worried. See, because like at this point, and again, this comes back to my point about being in peacetime. Peacetime really just means that the war is still going on, just there's not soldiers and tanks and planes. It's secrets and spies and, you know, little sabotage here and there. Like at this point, people are more worried about China getting information than they are actually, you know, arming up for war. Eventually, maybe, yeah, but for now, it's all about the information. Like it's all about like how can you get those dirty, dirty secrets before anybody else does.
On in
All
1945.
right, okay, wait. So I think we understand what's going on here. So Japan took these islands.
The San Francisco Treaty anyway, all right?
And then it
Now let's
became
move
this
on to
whole
Russia's
disputed
viewpoint. Russia
territory.
argues that, first of all, the disputed islands are in fact geographically a part of the Kuril island chain, and that the Japanese government's assertion that they are not is simply a tactic used to enhance their own claim, and this assertion is not supported by any basic geography or history. Second of all, Russia cites the Yalta Agreement of 1945, in which the Western Allies explicitly promised the Soviet Union control of the Kuril Islands in exchange for the Soviets declaring war on Japan, which the Russians argue geographically includes the 4 disputed islands. However, Japan's legal team is quick to point out that they were never a party to the Yalta Agreement and never agreed to or signed any of its terms.
But they didn't agree to or sign any of the Yalta Agreement terms because, again, they were the aggressors in a war and thus not party to being able to negotiate their own treaty, at least for this part. Anyways, I think we get the point. The point is, Russia's in Japan, Russia's in Ukraine, Russia's everywhere. Over the spy balloons, there's spy balloons everywhere. What are they going to do with a top secret aircraft, for example? They don't know what it does. They know how to see what they want to do is they want to try to make it, right? But it's not just about knowing the shape of it because the cameras don't just take pictures. They can actually have like radars on them. They can scan. They can do like material searches. They might even do an X-ray. I don't know. But again, the problem here is it's not so much what they are, it's where they are. You know, knowing that information is dangerous, and to build one of these military bases could take years and years and millions to billions of dollars worth of investments. So having to suddenly remove that or, you know, try to hide it again from these spy balloons is just a nightmare. But again, this is like the 5th spy balloon apparently that's been floating over our skies. Like I don't like if you can let that many spy balloons go, then like what are we doing? Like again, what I've been saying is that we're in an information warfare age. All right, so at this point, the more you know is the better you'll be. Like that's Putin knows that. I'm telling you, Putin's former KGB. That's all his job was. His entire job was, where's the dirt? Tell me, where is the dirt?
Ukrainian officials say that Russia has targeted the...
All right, anyways, in a real Ukrainian update, because we have a Romanian here who's very attached to Ukraine, and I do like giving you the update. In a Ukrainian update, Ukraine has been attacked slightly again.
Infrastructure in a series of drone and missile strikes. The attacks on Friday morning triggered air raid sirens in cities across the country.
So again, this is coming back to that point that we were making about targeting civilians versus like actual combatants in a war. Russia is semi-targeting civilians by basically attacking nuclear plants, reservoirs, stuff like that, trying to cut energy, trying to cut water. This is a dam that was damaged by a Russian explosion, essentially. Draining this reservoir, costing tons of energy infrastructure that's, you know, again, can cost billions of dollars to rebuild. And what's actually really entertaining, to me anyways, is that Poland, the Baltic states, everybody have seized Russian assets that they were holding there. And now they are trying to consider whether or not they should use those assets to essentially rebuild Ukraine, to fix the damages caused. I wouldn't do it right now because, again, I don't know how it's going to go. They could probably get a lot more damaged. But it's something up for debate, and I think that's hilarious. Like, yeah, take my money. Like, they caused it. They started it. Why not? Why not use their money to rebuild?
Residents have also been urged to take shelter in other cities, including the capital, Kyiv. Authorities say the Zaporizhia region, at least 17 projectiles there hit within an hour. Moscow appears to be stepping up attacks in Ukraine's south and in the east. Now, the DW team in Kyiv has also headed to a shelter. Let's try and bring in DW special correspondent Aya Ibrahim, who has been reporting from there. So, Aya, where are you and what is happening?
We're right now in Kyiv, where, like most residents of the city, we woke up to piercing sounds of sirens signaling that the city might come under attack. And just in the past couple of minutes, we heard these sort of clopping sounds coming from the air, and that's usually a sign that that something that's been trying to target the city has been struck down. And so that's why normally, Sarah, we would be coming to you from, let's say, a less improvised setting, but we have chosen to start heading to the shelter. You can see its entrance right behind me. It's close enough that we could jump into it just in case anything happens. But residents have been advised to move to shelters. I think what's striking to me here is, how, let's say, nonchalant the residents are with these warnings, walking to the streets.
At this point, they're literally like, it's over. I believe it could be over this year, says a Ukraine war expert. That's interesting. Twitter files are just the tip of the iceberg. I want to know where the iceberg leads. All right. Okay. Hold on. We'll look at that in a second.
Win or gain, especially in the east, and that's why we've seen these particularly heavy targeting of towns and regions in the east. So Kharkiv, Kherson, Dnipro, and so on. So that certainly falls into that pattern, or into that expectation, if you will.
Within an hour. Now, the Russian Ministry of Defense has released a video of what it says are Russian assault units training for combat. Zaporizhia region say at least 17 projectiles hit within an hour.
Very difficult to say on the evidence already. Some reports that I've read.
All right, so basically they're just saying there's more bombing going on. Sorry, it's basically just more of the same business. Apparently, a NATO member from Romania said that the missiles flew about 35 kilometers northeast of its border. So it's getting closer and closer to Romanian airspace. So I would be careful, especially being in Romania, General. Just calling you out. Actually, are you still in the chat? It's not important. The point is, if you are in Romania, if you're in Ukraine, if you're in this part, like, be careful. Be careful. I know we'll have to see what's called mud season. Yeah, you're right about that. I think I've talked about that on this channel before. So, most people don't realize this, but the reason why there's that joke about, like, you can't invade Russia, you can't invade them in the winter, you can't invade them in whatever. Winters are too cold. They freeze everything, especially the soldiers. A lot of them ended up basically getting frostbite. But then, there's the mud season, which is essentially when most of that Baltic region just kind of ends up getting muddy and sticky. And Hitler actually had a really big problem with this in World War II, because when he was invading, there were no roads, and everything was just mud, and they just kept getting stuck. Now, nowadays, the infrastructure is a little better, but there's still just a lot of dirt roads, a lot of mud, and tanks do not do well in that situation. Now, we've improved. We've gotten better tanks, but still, Russia's not using the best of their technology. Like, I don't know what they're using, but it's not the best. Anyways, that is our update on Ukraine. We are going to quickly take a look at this Twitter files business.
I want to echo the chairman. Thank you, Ms. Parker, for your extraordinary service and your courage for being here today. Mr. Turley, I want to start with you. The Twitter files laid bare for the American people what you correctly call unconstitutional, quote, censorship by surrogate. Okay. Matt Taibbi writes, quote, Twitter's contact with the FBI was constant and pervasive as if it were a subsidiary. Do you agree with that assessment?
I do. What we know on the record so far shows a relationship that goes beyond this sort of informal exchange of ideas.
You're correct. In fact, isn't it true that leading up to the 2020 election, Twitter had weekly meetings with not just the FBI, with DOJ, with DHS, with DNI, to conduct this unconstitutional censorship by surrogate? We know that because of the Twitter files, correct?
Correct.
And it was not just meetings, not just censorship of stories like the Hunter Biden laptop story. We also now know that the FBI paid Twitter over $3.4 million.
By the way, Scruffy Cat, you're totally right. That is why they're doing it. It's because the Donetsk region, the part that they're attacking, is basically a gateway. Like there's like a mountain region, and then it just kind of opens up, and then becomes big plains that can just kind of spread out. So they're trying to control a little choke point there. That's the idea anyways. It's to defend themselves from NATO. But yes, this is about the Musk leaks. And I'm still trying to figure out who this person is. Who's Elise Stefanik? Is that? I mean, not Elise Stefanik. I'm pretty sure that's this person, but I'm trying to figure out who the other person is. Yeah, no, I'm trying to figure out, because honestly, like, this is actually a good question. Like, is the FBI, the DHS, and DOJ all working with whatever? Like, I want to know. I want to know what's going on. Like, damn.
Of taxpayer funds to censor these stories before the 2020 election. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'll admit it. I even said it's a nothing burger. Well, no. I said the Hunter Biden laptop thing was a nothing burger, because that sounds like it's mostly just dick pics and cocaine. I mean, again, if it's not, then I'll eat my words on that one too. But again, Hunter Biden's laptop looks like it's probably just a lot of dick pics and cocaine. But with the Twitter files, yeah, no, this is a good question. Like, honestly, it's not like I didn't think that they were already involved. Again, like, if your job is intelligence, why would you not be on the website whose job is basically to self-report? Right? Like, you're like Twitter is basically a massive self-report. Like, all the time, all you do is just post, like, you know, hey, just robbed a bank. No, but like, you know what I mean? Like, it's a self-report is what it is. So again, if you're the FBI, if you're the CIA, like, why wouldn't you hop onto basically a place that is where you can essentially report on yourself? Right? It's the reason why Snowden came out and said the NSA is like monitoring your phone calls, your texts, your everything. Like, their job is to collect information. That's what they're doing, right? Yeah, like it's accurate, because again, you are the one putting it out there. Like, you're the one saying it. Like, again, it makes sense for them to be involved. Where it starts getting really, really uncomfortable is the idea that they are, you know, trying to manipulate that and trying to censor people, trying to break stuff like that. But again, Republicans kind of asked for this by saying that whole, like, you know, it's a private company, they can do whatever they want, man, and they don't have to serve you. But there is still a sense that you can at least, like, have the expectation to be informed about this, right? Like, the whole shadow banning thing, like, you know, I would want to be informed, like, hey, you are posting a lot of hateful content, so we are reducing the amount of publicity your posts get. Like, give me a little warning, give me a little something, tell me, right? Like, just last week, I was saying some anti-Semitic stuff, right? I was here talking about pro-Palestine business, and Ilhan Omar got basically kicked out for just questioning, for basically just saying, like, hey, maybe we shouldn't just go along with everything Israel says. Maybe we should put a little more asterisks and question marks into the money we send. But, you know, again, this is also a huge self-report. Here I am. I'm self-reporting my ideas the whole time. But I don't think I'm being censored. I just think that, like, people who like my ideas will show up. They'll stay longer. People who don't might not. And people who are curious to see what I'm thinking but also disagree with me might stay. I'm looking at you. I know you're out there. Anyways, let's keep going.
That money was paid. Twitter confirmed that.
And this,
wait,
the Twitter
they were paid? Oh, hold on.
Correct.
And it was not just meetings, not just censorship of stories like the Hunter Biden laptop story. We also now know that the FBI paid Twitter over $3.4 million of taxpayer funds to censor these stories before the 2020 election. Is that correct?
That money was paid. Twitter confirmed that.
And the Twitter files are just the tip of the iceberg, because there's so much more. There was a corrupt revolving door at the highest levels between the FBI and Twitter. Look no further than Jim Baker, former general counsel at the FBI, who helped unlawfully investigate Donald Trump in the 2016 election. Or look at Jim Comey's deputy chief of staff, who became the director of strategy at Twitter. Isn't it true, according to the Twitter files, that there were so many FBI officials who then went to work at Twitter that created their own Slack channel and crib sheet for onboarding? The Twitter files.
That is wild. I mean, look, I get it. At some point, you want to go private. Like, I worked for the government for a little bit. I want to go private. That's why, you know, like, I do stuff myself now. But, like, that's a whole different ballgame. Like, they're literally so many of them going there that they're making like their own little coalition there. Like, that's wild. Like what?
Confirm that, correct?
Correct.
Are you aware, as the American people are aware, that according to polling, of the people that were made aware of the Hunter Biden laptop story, 53.
Look, here's what I will say, Leviticus. I think that it's okay for people to argue on this. What I do think is we have really big issues to deal with, and yeah, one of them is this. This is actually one of the big deals. All right, like I don't care that Democrats have been, kind of like shoving this one aside. This is a big deal, and this is one of those things where like you don't have to be on the same side as me. You don't have to agree with me. Like, we can have disagreements and you can still bring up a really great point. Like, I'm not sure I'm going to agree with everything this woman says, but I will say that I definitely agree that this needs to be looked at more. Like let's put it this way. Let's say the bias was slanted the other way, right? Let's say that the bias is slanted more towards more hate speech, more pushing of like a bunch of other, less like ideal situations. Like, it's I don't know. It's hard. It's hard because like I think both people make good points here, but you can't just pretend like this is not an issue. But they are. Thank you. Yes. Yeah. No, it's the same. We're saying the same thing, which is that you can't just pretend it's not an issue, because if you let this one go, it will come and bite you in the ass. It will happen. Just like Citizens United is a shit show. And we will look at that at some point, because I do have a cool documentary. Not today, but some other day we will look at the Citizens United decision, because that thing is a disaster. It's literally a walking disaster. But the idea is that, if you let things slide one time, two times, three times, just because they work in your favor, eventually it will come back and it will bite you in the ass. So if we just say, no, it's totally fine for the government to, get involved in all of our social medias or whatever. Yeah, exactly. So if you can't give an inch, take a mile. Like, it's all just, like, once you give them a little bit, then they'll take more and more and more. Like, we should have stopped. Like, the NSA leak should have been the end of this, right? Like, when Snowden came out and said, hey, listen, like, the NSA has everything. We know about your dick pics, right? We got them all. I've seen them all. They're gross. That should have been it. We should have stopped there. Like, we should have put our foot down and said, listen, the government cannot get involved in your privacy. And your privacy extends to the things that you post and choose to put out to the world. Now, at the same time, what I just said, it seems a little oxymoronic, right? Your privacy extends to what you choose to share with the world. Right? Like, that's weird. Like, you're choosing to put that out there. You are putting these tweets out. You're putting these photos up. You're putting these videos up. Like, is it my fault that at your trial they pulled up the video of you going 120 miles per hour down the road and crashing into another car? That doesn't sound like my problem. That sounds more like a you problem. But, like, does that violate the Fifth Amendment? Is that count as testifying against myself? I don't know. And these are the questions that we should be addressing. I don't think the entire Congress needs to be focused on this, but we do need an actual, like, moment to really digest this and talk about it and debate it and figure out, like, where do we go from here? Where does your privacy end? Where should my expectation of fairness and privacy limit itself? Right? Like, is it fair to have people be, I don't know, do we want to keep saying shadow banned? No, I don't think so. That's weird. Is it fair to outright ban them? Yeah, I'm cool with that. Because again, like it's your company, it's your platform, it's your business, like it's your publishing, whatever it is. Like, sure, ban them, but like, of course, use online public info against you if it's set to private. If it's phone call, SMS, they need a warrant. Yeah. So see, like it's a line. Like there's a line there, you know. And again, like if you're gonna commit a crime, don't post it online. I feel like that should be very, very easy. Yet somehow I see it all the time. Like people just post videos of themselves doing these crimes, live stream themselves doing crime. Like that's dumb. Dumb. I literally watched I think it was a TikTok or something, but this kid was just sitting there like playing around. He's like, I don't know, 15, 13. He's got a gun. He's waving it in front of the camera. At some point, somebody starts shooting through the window. He opens up the door, starts shooting back. And I'm just sitting there like, what are you doing, man? Like, don't put this online. Like, dumb kids. Anyways, let's keep going.
3% would have changed their vote, including 61% of Democrats. This is the definition of election meddling, and it's the definition of election meddling by the FBI on behalf of Democrats, paid for by the U.S. taxpayers. It's collusion, it's corruption, and it's unconstitutional. Ms. Parker, I want to go to you next about your experience at the FBI.
Okay, hold on. The one thing I will say is I don't know if you can really say that it's the Democrat. I know that it was biased towards the Democrats, and I know they benefited from it. But from what I hear, it's the FBI. Does the FBI lean slightly towards Democrats? Maybe, yeah. But like, let's not start throwing individual senators under the bus just yet. Like, I wanna hear some names, lady. I wanna see you name some names. I wanna see pictures. I wanna see facts. I wanna see evidence.
Because this is not just about the Twitter files, which folks are focused on because of the news it made. It's about a systemic rot in the culture and the politicization of the leadership of the FBI, and it needs to be rooted out. Let's take a step back.
Yes, actually, fair point. FBI should not be politicized. It should not be favoring one political party or another. It's just a police force. It should be there investigating federal crimes and taking it down. Right now is what is happening in the Sinaloa cartel. Yeah, yeah, it's decentralized. It's total chaos is what the Sinaloa cartel is right now. But yeah, no, there's a mess going on. But let's keep going. Let's keep seeing
parents who wanted to stand up for their kids at school board meetings. Whoa. On September 29th, 2021, the National School Boards Association sent a letter to Joe Biden equating parents at school board meetings to domestic terrorists. And on October 4th, Attorney General Merrick Garland issued a memorandum to the FBI and U.S. attorneys that the department would use federal enforcement tools to target and prosecute these parents. Do you consider parents?
By the way, small thing about the Sinaloa cartel. Again, we're not gonna jump into that right now because it's has nothing to do with this. But I do see a lot of comments. The head of the FBI for Mexico. It is not called the FBI in Mexico. I'm just to try to put this into context. The head of the FBI in Mexico is currently on trial in Brooklyn, New York, for essentially being a double agent. Now, I'll let that sink in for a second. What that means is that they didn't catch El Chapo for so long, partially because he chose not to catch him. Partially because he may have been working with him. Now, this is an allegation that El Chapo made, so I would take it with a little grain of salt, but there's a problem with corruption in God, I was gonna say Mexico. Yeah, I'll just say Mexico. It's fine. I speak Spanish. You guys know that. So, anyways, there's corruption in Mexico. All right, and they know it. Everybody knows it. You know, but we sent a bunch of money down there, telling them, "Hey, fix it." Not the corruption, the drugs. We said, "Fix it. Fix that shit." Right? We said, "Fix it." And do you know what this man did? He made a TV show. He made a cop-style TV show. It's a telenovela. It's a telenovela, which is basically like a long-ass soap opera. And he did it using the helicopter that the United States gave them to do these drug operations. All right, so I'm not trying to say that because I'm an immigrant, like I'm so pro-immigrant that I can't understand that there's a problem at the border. Okay, I understand there's a problem at the border. I understand that there's a huge corruption problem in Mexico. I argue that the best policy is drones, a fuck ton of drones, and a response team on the ground, but drones. Because like at this point, drones, cameras, everything, like you don't guard a border with fences these days. You guard it with information. Like those walls don't do as much as they say they do. But the point here is that the top, the very tippity top, that was getting money, awards, medals, that was basically being cheered on as like the golden child of the police force of Mexico, corrupt as fuck. And unfortunately, that cast doubt onto the entire system, right? It cast doubt on basically his entire line of work. The man was living in a like $3 million mansion in Florida. He was just chilling out, just having a good. I don't know if 3 million is a man. 3 million is probably a mansion in Florida. Fine, you know, whatever. But the point is, he was living it up. He was having fun with probably money that he was being paid by the Sinaloa cartel or other drug dealers. I don't know. But again, allegations. He's currently on trial right now. You guys can actually see it. It's fairly simple. But the point is that there is corruption. There's corruption in government. It's just, it's like it's 1-to-1, right? But that corruption doesn't go away until we get more visibility, more transparency, until we actually can see what's happening with that money. Where does it go? What happens after you, like, I will petition this every single day if I have to. But when you pay your taxes, you should get a receipt in the mail. You should get a little thing that says, "Hi, your taxes this year went to A, B, C, D, E, F, G." You know, you can see the percentage that went to all the different programs. You can see what it says. Yet that should not be something you go and search out. That should be something that is sent to you from the government. That should be standard. Every time you do your taxes, you also get, like, I don't care if it's a thick book. I don't care if all of you just throw it out. I think it should be your right to know what your government does with your money. And I think that it should be a local thing, a federal thing, a state thing. I think everybody should be entitled to know, where is my money going? Because if I'm giving you a bunch of money thinking that, you know, like all my tax money is going to the school system, my kids are going to get a good education, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then I find out that the library is completely empty because you guys can't afford to keep books on the shelves. Like, where is the money going? So there's a story about how Irish does 5'9" that is now military. Sound more Republican than you know. I don't care. Like, again, I said it before, I'll say it again. You guys can choose what I am. You know, like I'm not trying to fit myself into a hole. I'm not trying to, like, you know, pinpoint like where I sit, where I don't sit. I think outside of America, I would be considered a centrist to possibly even a moderate. But here, some of the things I say will definitely sound like socialist, liberal, like craziness. And I'm okay with that. I accepted that. I mean, Leviticus has been here a long time. He knows that, like, every now and then I just go off on a spiel about how everybody deserves healthcare and how healthcare shouldn't be something that you think about affording. It's just something that they give to you. You know, like it's not your fault that your leg got broken in an accident, so you shouldn't have to pay for it. You shouldn't have to insure yourself against things that aren't your responsibility in the first place. But again, yeah, ambulances. I'm just surprised that public services aren't just covered, right? But anyways, let's keep going with this. I wanna do this Twitter thing.
Domestic terrorists.
And then we'll get into the State of the Union.
Domestic terrorists. No, I do not. No.
No, the parents are not domestic terrorists. I think they were saying the parents were using white supremacist language, and they just said that white supremacist is also terrorism. Now, I think that if you have an opposition to a class or to a way that the school does things, you should just be forced to take the class, or at least learn what it is, you know. But I don't know if that's what they're talking about.
People. But there's more to this story. It goes back further than that initial letter on September 29th.
Wait, so are they saying that moms got censored for being terrorists?
Because the letter didn't happen organically. It was solicited. It was solicited by the White House and by the Secretary of Education. Essentially, the Biden administration laid the predicate for which it used to justify illegally targeting the American people, targeting these parents. Is it proper protocol as a former FBI officer to set that predicate, to manufacture?
All right. Okay. Actually, Scruffy, you bring up a really good point. You bring up a really, really good point. Because I agree with you. I've seen behind the curtain. I've seen how the government works. I know that they are not the best. But on the other hand, privacy ends up leading to the greed taking over, in essence. There's a really good episode of, actually, there's a really good video. I think you can find it online, of someone breaking down like costs for medicine and like how we got to this place essentially. And one of the big things that you hear is like insurance companies were set up to negotiate with a hospital so that they could figure out what to charge people essentially. And when hospitals found out that the people weren't paying it but the insurance company was, they started saying, all right, well, I gave him this needle, it's about let's say $500. And the insurance company then had to say, no, I know that you get those needles wholesale for like 2 cents each. You can't bullshit me on that. But it got to such a point that like they're not really competing anymore. They're just kind of working amongst themselves to try to keep raising the bar a little bit, right? The insurance company always wants to pay less. The hospital always wants to charge more because the treatments are getting more expensive. And then the insurance companies deal with that by saying, all right, well, cool, but now I don't want to cover this, this, that, and this, right? Yep. Bails out failing, bad policy. Capitalism relies on the fact that if a business model sucks, you let that business fail. Yes, I agree with that. I totally agree with that. But I think the problem here is that we have also created certain systems that are too big to fail while also not actually being too big to fail, right? Like 2008, basically we said that that entire industry was about to collapse. It was going to be terrible, blah 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 blah, etc. It ended up being like one company that really just screwed over everybody, right? And Bush got the advice that if we let them fail, it could be catastrophic. Part of the reason being that for many years, people have been pushed on this idea that the 401k or a retirement plan is really the only way forward. But these retirement plans are based around you giving money to investors who will then put those into private industries that will succeed, and the stock always goes up and blah, 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 etc. But when those investors put that money in irresponsible places, right? Which in this case ended up being houses that were essentially not yet built. That's when it all fell apart, right? But I think that things like that happen because there's a lack of regulation. But then if there's too much regulation, who regulates and blah, 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 and the circle keeps going. It's a self-fulfilling cycle, right? Because then if there was enough regulation, then yeah, that wouldn't happen. But how do you regulate that? You need more staff. And why do you need more staff? Because the people that are there are already overwhelmed and they can't do enough and blah, 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 blah. And it just keeps on circling in this vicious cycle. So the reason why I think the government should be in charge of healthcare is because then it just becomes a guarantee, right? it just becomes a guarantee. Like, I'm not saying that the government is going to do your surgery, because I would not trust them to do my surgery. I want a doctor doing my surgery. I just want them to pay the bill. That's it. That's all I'm saying. Like, that's it. A business's one goal is to earn profit. Yep, that's it. But the point and the reason why I keep going to this point is because if their one goal is profit, you have to be the one that puts the little limits on that, right? Because if they are just sent to earn profit, they will literally go and go and go until they do, right? So how do you make profit? You cut your costs, you up your prices, you etc. So that's why we need those regulations, because how do you cut costs? You pay your workers less. Or how else can you cut costs? Have less workers. But if you have less workers, you can't provide the same quality, but you can still charge the same price because maybe you don't have competitors. Like, it just gets worse and worse and worse. That's part of the problem we have with big tech, is that big tech has essentially no competitor, right? Like who's going to compete with Google, right? I mean, now it's AIs and whatnot. There's a whole AI war going on. But what do you think forcing up the minimum wage does then? Okay, so speaking of forcing up the minimum wage, part of that argument is just that we can't afford things, right? But what I would say is, if you want a nation where we are, I guess if we're going to be pro-business, right? You want to be pro-business, then you should be taking away some of the things that make it hard to compete. Like, let's put it this way. Local coffee shop, Starbucks. Okay? Now, I saw that Starbucks started offering some crazy incentives to go work there, right? They started saying, hey, guys, if you come with me, we will pay for your education. We will start a 401k for you. We will, like, it was a whole bunch of stuff. Hold on. Hold on. I'll look this up real quick because I don't want to. Starbucks benefits workers. I don't know. Let's do something like that. Boom. Health coverage. Okay. Hold on. I don't want to do the cookie stick. Health coverage, stock and paid time off, parental leave, education and loan management, commuter benefit, partner assistance. So this is all the stuff that Starbucks is offering to you, right? If you go to work with Starbucks, we will get you dental and vision plans? What? A 401k match? Paid time off, parental leave, education and student loans, commuter benefits, partner assistance. So what I am saying is, a business should not have to offer you these things. They should be guaranteed to you. You should just have them. All right? If you're with me where the business's number one goal is profit, right? Then why is a business paying for these things? Why does a business need to pay me when I get sick? Right? Like, why does my employer have to pay the doctor instead of the government? Right? Like what I'm saying is that if the government took care of parental leave, education assistance, paid time off, like guaranteed paid time off, a retirement, a realistic retirement plan, because let's be honest, the one we have right now is not working well, and guaranteed health coverage, then you'd be able to compete. You'd be able to start a local coffee shop, right? Because the local coffee shop wouldn't have to compete with Starbucks for workers. Or, well, it would, but it'd be on a more even playing field. Because again, if I'm a small business, I'm sorry, but I don't know if I can match your 401k. I don't know if profits are going to be that good this year. I definitely don't think I'm going to be able to give you guys as much paid time off as Starbucks can. Like, that's hard. I don't think I can do that. Parental leave, like, no. Like, so the same thing you ascribe to business, still pay for it through taxation. What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean by that? I do want a little more clarity on that. But what I'm saying is that basically all these benefits are not something that a government, a business should have to pay for and or give to you. It should be something that, like, let me put it this way. I think that businesses should have to pay a flat tax, right? A certain percentage, basically, based on what level of earnings they are at, right? And then, yes. I totally agree with that. I do agree with that. And yeah, to be fair, I am saying that the business is going to pay for it because I am saying that they are the highest earners, so they are going to have to pay for it. But what I'm saying is that the highest earners can afford to pay for it, and then the rest of us can afford to make a business and possibly compete and possibly become one of the highest earners. And then you should basically be grateful that you can pay taxes to help somebody else make it up to. Like, right? Like, I don't know. This is getting really, we're getting really lost here. But my point here is that if we had a government that could provide you with parental leave, medicine, a robust retirement package, kind of like Denmark has. Denmark has a really, really great retirement package for their people. Paid time off, etc., etc., etc. All this good stuff, educations, community benefits, blah, blah, blah. All this stuff, you would see a lot more small businesses. You would see a lot more local small businesses because they'd be able to afford it. They'd be able to afford all this. Like, it'd be so much easier to have a business if you were able to just not worry about covering healthcare, stocks, paid time off, parental leave, all this stuff. If this stuff was just guaranteed, then you could just get a worker and say, all right, cool, you're sick, don't come in. Like, it's fine. We got other workers. You know, you're gonna take a vacation, cool. You know, take your 2 weeks. It's something that's guaranteed to you. It's not something that you have to ask me for. Like parental leave, yeah, I know you're gonna be a dad. I'll see you in 6 months. I'll see you in 3 months, whatever it is. You know, like, it's wild. And on top of that, America has the smallest parental leave out of anybody. It's insane. Yeah, I know. This would be an insanely long conversation if we really got into it. But yeah, so again, my point is that even if if we still had to pay for it, again, we would still all basically be paying for it in our taxes. The ones who would pay for it the most, again, would be the highest earners, which again would probably be the most successful businesses. But then we could afford to compete because right now, like, you can't compete with Amazon, you can't compete with Walmart, you can't compete with any of those, and maybe you never can. But there could be more local businesses if they didn't have to worry about competing with them on benefits and stuff like that. Especially benefits that, like, the rest of the modern world can just kind of afford. But anyways, let's keep going. Let's see what happened here.
Opening investigation.
I believe that no one should be targeted for free speech and that violence should never be tolerated under any circumstance, but it should definitely not, no one should be targeted because they want to speak up at a school board meeting.
This was a setup, and it was the setup, and it's the real definition of weaponization of the government against the American people.
Here we go.
And it's not just this example of targeting parents at School Boards Association. It goes back to the opening of Crossfire Hurricane. It goes back to the faulty FISA application. It goes back to what we heard on that first panel from Senators Grassley and Johnson. It goes back to the suppression illegally of the Hunter Biden laptop story paid for by the U.S. taxpayers. This corruption needs to be rooted out, and it's not just about protecting the U.S. Constitution. It is most importantly about protecting the American people from the weaponization of the federal government against them. Yield back.
Yep. Again, totally understand why that's a big issue. Totally. Did you write this tweet? Oh boy, what is this? Oh no, they're bringing out past tweets. All right, so again, you know, we've been talking about this for a while now. Private companies do what they're gonna do, but at the same time, they need some regulation. But at the same time, you can't just kind of regulate the fuck out of them, because then, where are we going to be? What was the last thing I said I was going to talk about? State of the Union. Right. So what is the State of the Union? I know some of you probably watched it. I watched part of it. I managed to tune in right as the funny part kicked in. We are not going to watch the whole hour and a half. I'm sorry, guys. I've only got like another 30 minutes in me, probably. But I do want to address some of the stuff that happened, because it was wild. It was insane. It was such a fun show. Like, oh my God. Apparently it was mostly well received, which is cool. Actually, there was a lot of bipartisan stuff in there, and there was a lot of not so bipartisan stuff in there, including, let's see the short. Is this the short? 4 big moments. Let's see.
The State of the Union is strong.
State of the Union is strong. All right. Seems more like emotional than fact based, but sure. Well, let's go with it. State of the Union is strong.
Some Republicans want Medicare and Social.
Yeah, I managed to turn the State of the Union on like maybe 15 minutes before he got to this part. And I was like, what's he talking about? And then I just hear, boo!
Security sunset. I'm not saying it's a majority. Let me give you, anybody who doubts it, contact my office. I'll give you a copy of the proposal.
All right, so I wanted to address this real quick. When he says that he's talking about, what was he talking about? Sunsetting Medicare and Social Security. There are proposals to do that, and there are people there who specifically want that. A lot of them are Republicans. So again, I understand where he's coming from. The idea of the whole sunsetting thing is that some people have proposed a bill that would essentially make it so that you have to renegotiate Medicare, Social Security, whatever, every so many years. Eventually that could lead to the entire shutdown of the program. But what they will argue is that all they're saying is they want a chance to renegotiate it and not to outright take it out. I get that. It's kind of a weird line here. But more than that, this wasn't really him trying to attack them. This was a bait, and it was taken. Like, they took the bait, and it in a really hilarious way too. Yeah, because after he said that again, boo, liar, whatever they yelled at. Is this the point? Yeah. Liar. Remember, this is also the woman who complained that she was only making $176,000 a year, showing up in what I believe is the fanciest coat I've ever seen at one of these events. But then again, maybe not. Who knows?
Well, I'm glad to see.
And there's McCarthy, who is clearly out of his depth. Like, literally, McCarthy has the worst job on the planet right now, which is trying to somehow unite a Republican Party that is literally as divided as it gets right now. Literally, they had to redo this vote for him, what, 15 times, 13 times? Yeah, he addressed the Tyre Nichols' death.
Let's commit ourselves to make the words of Tyler's mom true. Something good must come from this. All of us in this chamber, we need to rise to this moment.
All right, so I will say, some people really like that moment with Tyre Nichols. I find it a little, I don't. I know that she's suffering something, and I know that the entire nation has had to witness it, but it is a little just off to see. I don't know. It's off to see them use people like that as political capital, especially when what he's trying to do is an emotional appeal. He's trying to get you to think about your emotions and whatnot throughout this. And let's be honest, nothing good is going to come from this. It's going to keep happening, right? What is this?
The idea that in 2020, 55 of the largest corporations in America, the Fortune 500, made $40 billion in profits and paid zero in federal taxes?
All right. This is what I'm talking about. Taxes, right? So if we tax these people who are paying basically nothing, who literally, we looked at Donald Trump's tax returns. He paid more to China than he did to the United States, right? So China can somehow get taxes out of these people, but we can't? Like, what do you mean? Especially like our own president, they can get our own president to pay them more in taxes than us while he's a sitting president? Like, our tax code is broken. It's got to be broken if that's the way this works. Like, this is insane.
Zero? Folks, it's simply not fair.
Is she wearing a crayon as her pin? What
but now, because of the law I signed, billion-dollar companies have to pay a minimum of 15%. God love them. 15%. The idea.
Yeah, so 15%. What's 15% of 40 billion? That's like 40 billion to, what? You know, can I say 15% of 40 billion? That's a lot of zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 6 billion? 6 billion. That's dope. That's $6 billion. We still have a multi-trillion-dollar deficit, but hey, 6 billion that wasn't there before. That's dope.
Yeah.
All right, hold on. Wait,
that in 2020.
No, this is a repeat. All right, so again, it's talking about the State of the Union. There was some popular bipartisan stuff. I don't think anybody has a problem with companies paying 15%. I think that's a really reasonable thing to ask, especially if it's the highest paying company. Like, they're literally talking about the Fortune 500 right now. Then there was the response. Oh boy. Harris reflecting on it. French show. This is why presidents pay. Why did it fall flat? Why did it fall flat? What's going on? I just want to see the small parts. I don't want to see the whole thing.
Some of my Republican friends want to take the economy hostage. I get it. Unless I agree to their economic plans. All of you at home should know what those plans.
See, look at this. He's just guns out. Boom, boom, boom. Like, he's firing shots. This is why after this, they were like, he's not being bipartisan at all. Guys, there's no bipartisanship here. Yeah, he literally came out guns blazing.
Plans are. Instead of making the wealthy pay their fair share, some Republicans.
This is the sunset thing. This is the
Social Security sunset. I'm not saying it's a majority.
Yeah, listen to this. Listen to this.
Let me give you, anybody who doubts it, contact my office. I'll give you a copy.
Look at that smile, too. He's so happy about this.
That means Congress doesn't vote. Well, I'm glad to see you. No, I tell you, I enjoy conversion. You know, it means if Congress doesn't keep the programs the way they are, they'd go away. Other Republicans say, I'm not saying it's a majority of you. I don't even think it's even a significant, but it's being proposed by individuals. Some of my.
Yeah, so again, I saw this. It was wild. So, what is this?
Republicans want Medicare and Social Security to sunset. I'm not saying it's a majority.
And he's like, no. I don't want to keep seeing that. I don't want to keep seeing that.
Anybody who doubts it.
No. All right. Okay. All right. Fair. Look, we'll keep going. Hold on. White House announces. Are you kidding me?
Another aircraft of some sort, airship, balloon, something was shot down today.
This is an hour ago. Apparently, we shot something down over Alaska.
Who owns it? What were the circumstances? Was the president directly involved in ordering this? And is wreckage being recovered?
Okay, so I'm going to try. Remind me if I forget something. Okay. Yes, the president absolutely was involved in this decision. He ordered it at the recommendation of Pentagon leaders. He wanted it taken down.
Oh, shit.
They did that. They did it using fighter aircraft assigned to U.S. Northern Command. The Pentagon will have more to say about the details of this later on this afternoon. It's only.
So it sounds like they learned from last time and they said, no. Don't let that shit get onto the continental U.S. Like, shoot it down over the water. I'm not sticking around to see what they're going to say about me this time.
Just within the last hour. We're calling this an object because that's the best description we have right now. We do not know who owns it.
UFO.
Whether it's state-owned or corporate-owned or privately owned, we just don't know. We don't know. As I said, state-owned. We don't know if it's state-owned, and we don't understand the full purpose. We don't have any information that would confirm.
It kind of sounds like they just saw something and they just shot it.
We do expect to be able to recover the debris since it fell not only within our territorial space, but on what we believe is frozen water. So a recovery effort will be made.
It's not great. It's not good.
We're hopeful that it'll be
I don't
successful,
like this.
and then we can learn a little bit more about it.
Was its appearance like the Chinese aircraft?
No, it was much smaller than the spy balloon that we took down last Saturday. The way it was described to me was roughly the size of a small car, as opposed to
drone maybe.
That was like 2 or 3 buses size, right? So
I don't know if there was a
much
person in
smaller, and not of the same, no significant payload, if you will.
And lastly, is it now the policy of the United States that if unidentified aircraft are over U.S. territory, that it is likely the president will choose to shoot it down?
The president will always act in the best interest of our national security and in the safety and security of the American people.
Oh, he caught himself there. He was about to say the president's always going to shoot it down. No. That was all right. That was fair. That was a fair response to that. But I can't believe that happened just an hour ago. People need to chill with the aliens thing. Yeah, no, I don't think it was an alien, but that is the word we use. We use UFO as an unidentified flying object. It was not meant to be. It was not meant to be what it was. You know, it was meant to be whatever. Wow, that's wild. Is there more on this? Is there something on Twitter or something? Justice 61. Fascinating how after years of debate me cries the moment Republicans won control of committee debates and hearings, they flopped spectacularly. Named their star members and still failed. What do you mean? What? Probably books somehow. Louis DeJoy plans slash 50,000. All right, is Twitter not a good place to go for this anymore? Did Twitter stop being good about, like, Alaska? Here we go. Alaska. Finally. Thank you. All right, let's see. U.S. Air Force just shot down a highly... Yep. I guess it's too early to get news, right?
Rumors that there is another Chinese balloon above Alaska or any other parts of U.S. territory that the U.S. shot down?
So I can confirm that the Department of Defense was tracking a high-altitude object over Alaska airspace.
Yo, you guys are talking to me about inflammatory content? Look at what Fox put on this. Look at this. White House on Russian spring offensive. Like, they already jumped to Russia on this. This thing got shot down literally an hour ago, and we're already saying it's Russia. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's Alaska. Like, if it's going to be anybody, it could be them. But at the same time, like, China's spy balloon came down through a similar path. So who knows who this belongs to, right?
There
like,
is
what?
Another Chinese balloon above Alaska or any other parts of U.S. territory that the U.S. shot down?
So I can confirm that the Department of Defense was tracking a high-altitude object over Alaska airspace in the last 24 hours.
Oh, boy. Oh, here we go.
The object was flying at an altitude of 40,000 feet and posed a reasonable threat to the safety of civilian flight. Out of an abundance of caution and at the recommendation of the Pentagon, President Biden ordered the military to down the object. And they did. And it came inside our territorial waters.
God.
Those waters right now are frozen, but inside territorial...
So it crash landed on some ice. Holy shit. What? Oh.
The object shot down over Alaska, Mr. President?
Biden comes out to wait for the...
What do you say?
Do you have anything to say about the object shot down over Alaska, Mr. President?
They say next? Is that what his answer was about the shooting down something over Alaska? Come on, man. I need answers. Oh, you're no fun. No, they shot it over Alaska and it fell into the water. It's basically the same thing as last time. Don't get ahead of yourself. Yep, here it is.
Some sort, airship, balloon, something was shot down today.
Yeah.
Who owns it? What were the circumstances? Was the president directly involved in ordering this?
You know how it is. They had to shoot it down.
Being recovered.
Look at that thing.
Okay, so I'm going to try.
God.
Remind me if I forget something. Okay. Yes, the president absolutely.
Look at the danger this thing posed to our country.
Ordered it, at their...
All right, okay, all jokes aside, shit's getting real. No, this is wild. All right, so let's hope. I'm not gonna stick around to see how this resolves. Sorry, guys, but let's hope that is not a problem, like a real problem. Let's just hope that is just what it is and nothing more. I'm gonna look at one more thing and then we will go. The State of the Union thing, like I said, apparently is mostly bipartisan, mostly boring. The way I saw it, just a bunch of dreamer talk. Like he was talking about passing immigration reform and tax reform and signing this, signing that. He did talk a little bit about how he's helped people, but not a lot. And most of it is just kind of like dreamer talk, just like up in the skies fantasy business where like, getting the actual Congress to fulfill on any of that is just not possible. So we're going to look at this real quick. It's Jason Smith. This came out about 57 minutes ago. This was Wednesday's House Ways and Means Committee. And we were talking about unemployment insurance.
Will come to order. Today's hearing has been a long time coming. For more than 2 years, Republicans have been sounding the alarm about the greatest theft of taxpayer dollars in American history. Okay. The massive fraud perpetrated in the unemployment insurance program that skyrocketed with the COVID-19 pandemic. While many Americans who actually qualified for these benefits were left struggling to reclaim their benefits and their identity, upwards of tens of billions of taxpayer dollars have been stolen. The unemployment...
Again, I don't know how prevalent this is, but what I will say is that I ended up watching this video of this one kid who just had like unemployment check on unemployment check on unemployment check. He was like tossing them out like those rap videos where they do the like $100 bills, like toss them out everywhere. It was insane. It was insane. So look, I don't know how much that happened, but I certainly don't want it to not get investigated.
Employment benefits passed in the CARES Act came at a time when millions of Americans were losing their jobs.
Let's also not forget that some states had such a shitty unemployment server, like to actually process all these applications and all this stuff, that a lot of people just ended up getting like basically none of what they deserved because of this.
Overnight, as government shut down businesses and ordered people to stay at home. Livelihoods were ripped away. There's no question folks needed help, which is exactly why Congress should have protected this program and those who needed it against the criminals who exploited it to commit fraud. UI fraud is not a victimless crime. For example, a Utah woman lost her job after a cyber criminal stole her identity, bank account information, and weekly benefit check. Many more Americans have stories just like hers.
And that's what I was talking about. Some people literally took somebody else's identity, applied for unemployment insurance, and then just started collecting the checks. That was it.
Employment insurance meant to help them get through temporary joblessness was stolen. Their most sensitive information compromised by criminals, while Democrats in Washington turned a blind eye. In addition to run-of-the-mill thieves, international crime rings took advantage of our national crisis. Law enforcement busted several rings that made off with millions often using Americans as money mules to launder money offshore. The Biden administration's Department of Labor's Inspector.
Okay, hold on. That doesn't sound like it was like international, whatever. That just sounds like some people got scammed. Like this is that like is he talking like Nigerian prince scams? Like what is he talking about? Because I did hear about this. I did hear that there were a lot of unemployment scams going around, but like again, that just sounds like a regular old scam, and we were investigating those anyways. Like he even said the FBI cracked down on those. Like
General believes significant fraud played a role within its estimate, a new estimate, 191 billion in improper payments. The range of estimates alone is sufficient reason for today's hearing. ID.me, an identity verification company hired by many states, estimated at an astounding 400 billion in fraud.
That's insane.
That suggests thieves may have stolen almost half of the 878 billion taxpayers spent on unemployment insurance. The White House itself.
Okay, hold on. Before we keep going with this, I do want to reiterate that this is political. There are biases. I don't know if it's 400 billion. It sounds like a really good number to say that about half of it was stolen. But again, we don't know what he means by it was used improperly or the fraud involved. If he means literally what we've been talking about, like identity theft, cashing unemployment checks that aren't yours, etc., like getting scammed and sending them to Nigeria and shit, yeah, totally on board for that. If he just means like certain people shouldn't have applied because they were like only like semi unemployed, I don't know. But I'm hoping he means the first one. You know, the like the you know, some people basically lost money that they earned or they deserved
Acknowledge that
through no fault of their own.
tens of billions were made in improper payments. They estimate 104 billion lost. More recently, the Government Accountability Office released its own report, making an early estimate that at least $60 billion went to criminals.
All right, okay, so now I get it. There's different estimates. So the White House is saying 60 billion. It looks good for them to say it's less. The whatever that organization said, it was 140 billion. That other thing said it 400 billion. This is wild.
Just one example of fraud. One example of fraud. One individual was able to file an unemployment claim in 29 different states and received over $500,000 in fraudulent benefits. With these varying estimates, it's clear that the
What? Sorry, I like squeaked while he was saying that. What?
In fraudulent benefits.
No. I gotta hear the money.
$500,000.
$500,000 from 30 states or 29 states. My God, this guy scammed like 2/3 of the country. Oh my gosh. Yeah, so see, I don't agree with any of this. This is not, I'm not cheering you on. You did not do a good job. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Go straight to jail. Like, not good. Not good. Not good. What? 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 What happened? Oh my God. Oh my God. How do you do that?
In fraudulent benefits.
Did he really think they weren't going to catch on to that? Like, I don't know. Oh my God.
With these varying estimates, it's clear that the Biden administration and Congress are in the dark about the size and scope of the greatest theft of taxpayer dollars in American history. The new Republican majority is turning on the lights. We tried when we were in the minority. As early as 2020, Republicans raised the alarm about fraud based on red flags from the Department of Labor's Inspector General and the Secret Service. As the evidence of fraud escalated, I'm sorry to say that Democrats continued to turn a blind eye. They ignored 2 requests from House Republicans on this committee to hold an oversight hearing just like the one today. Democrats blocked a congressional resolution to get answers about what the Department of Labor knew about funds going to international crime rings. Democrats even voted to end the identity verification requirements and phase outs of emergency UI programs they had previously supported in December of 2020. Republicans proposed amendments to protect taxpayers and those who needed to get unemployment benefits. Democrats rejected them outright. Instead, they unilaterally extended unemployment benefits in their so-called bailout bill.
All right, so here's the thing. I want to know what they were talking about, because part of that, I can understand why they didn't pass those stuff, because again, most people will cram in almost anything. But what people don't really understand about these bills is, especially the bigger ones, you start making concessions left, right, here, center, and then suddenly the bill that you thought just says like A, B, C now has the whole alphabet included. I don't know exactly how much of that is what's going on here, but this is troubling. This is troubling for sure.
They did this even.
But what I also will say is that if you had more funding going to places like the IRS and also, I guess, the Department of Labor and other places like that, they could be more on top of this stuff and vigilant. At the same time, like, I don't know, they're already getting a ton of money and they're not being vigilant about this. It's a weird place to be in, but this is insane. What?
Even as most businesses had already reopened at a time when the Congressional Budget Office projected the economy to return to pre-pandemic levels of growth by the middle of 2021 and unemployment to steadily...
All right, here's what I think they were thinking. I think the Democrats were thinking, people need this help. They need it now. We can't start putting conditions on it because then they won't take it. The problem with that is that without putting these safeguards in place, yeah, it was ripe for abuse.
Decline without any further stimulus spending. The Biden administration has been asleep at the wheel. In his last State of the Union, the president bragged about appointing a chief pandemic prosecutor 14 months into his administration. That position has sat vacant for months. The Biden administration then changed the rules to make it easier for states to sweep potential cases of fraud under the rug. Those with their identity stolen weren't the only victims. Democrats' unrestrained COVID unemployment insurance programs fueled a labor shortage that punished American families and small businesses and denied individuals the paycheck and dignity that came from a job.
All right, hold on. The labor shortage was fueled by the pandemic. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Like, you can't blame the Democrats for getting the entire country sick. That's not how that works. You can say that the unemployment benefits were paying out enough that some people chose to not go back to work, but at the same time, it wasn't that much, you know? And most of those people that just didn't end up going back to work still found jobs. They just found different jobs.
Just 2 days ago, small business owners in West Virginia shared with this committee their struggle to find workers because Congress...
That'd be a fun one. I have no idea how that would go. All Asian countries together versus China. Let's see. Oh, thanks for the follow. Love follows. So, all right. Yeah, no. So I guess what I would say, all Asian countries together versus China. Do they get help? Do they get help from NATO, the US, anybody, or is it just them on their own? Because if it's just them on their own, then we're going to have a big problem. No? Oof. All right. Okay. Also, yeah, good afternoon. Hi. Lovely to see you all here. All right, let's see. If it's all the Asian countries versus China, I would say China probably wins that. I'm gonna be honest. China probably wins that. They have more production capabilities, and on top of that, most of those Asian countries don't have enough of a military force to really compete. Like we were just learning, Japan's entire army is self-defense, and they've got U.S. bases basically scattered about everywhere. But, also good afternoon. Good afternoon, Canadian. Always love to hear from the North. It's always fun. Anyways, yeah, we were just looking about unemployment fraud. We already covered pretty much everything. I'm going to do a quick wrap up in a little bit, but,
Stewards
we'll do it
of
all.
the American people's hard-earned tax dollars.
Blah, 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 blah. All right, okay, we get the point here. So, sorry, guys. So, I am going to do my quick wrap up. So, today we did a whole bunch of stuff. We talked about how Russia has taken some parts of Japan. Not Ukraine, Japan. But apparently they've had those for almost 80 years, and thus the war in Japan is not over. And by that I mean World War II. World War II is still happening in Japan against Russia. They just have been going about it in a peaceful method. It's just a little easier that way. So Russia's been illegally occupying some islands off of the coast of Hokkaido. It's kind of just disputed territory, kind of similar to Ukraine. However, things have been escalating recently. Specifically, let me do a quick little wrap up here. Let's see. March 7th, 2022, the Prime Minister of Japan declared that they were a territory that belonged to Japan and that Japan had sovereignty. March 8th, the foreign minister described those 4 islands as being part of Japan. Then March 21st, Russia said that they are no longer doing peace treaty talks with Japan. June 7th of 2022, Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova announced Russia's intent to cancel a 1998 agreement allowing Japanese fishermen to operate near the southern Kuril Islands. And finally, in September 5th of this past year, the document was signed by the Prime Minister, Mikhail Mishustin, about Russia's unilateral withdrawal from a visa agreement which allowed former Japanese residents to visit the disputed islands without visa. So basically, Japan and Russia used to kind of share these islands. Now Russia's saying they're mine, get out. It's done. Let's see, what else? We talked about the State of the Union, mostly boring, kind of good, kind of bad. He baited Republicans and got them to admit that they will not cut Medicare and Social Security. We will see how that goes. I doubt it's going to last. But hey, you do what you got to do. And let's see, that was Russia, and then Turkey, Syria, awful. Just awful. In fact, hold on. For Turkey or whatever. How do you... Sure, we'll do this one. So, I don't know of any really big non-profits or anything, but this is a link to a charity. You guys can donate a little bit of money. Hopefully it helps people in Turkey and Syria. Again, at this point, they're basically just cleaning up, but there's a chance. There's a chance that someone was alive in there. And it's really, really hard to watch. Now, the big news that I got to talk about for a few minutes, but I still don't know much about because it only happened an hour ago, is that over Alaska, a unidentified flying object was just shot down. We don't know what it is. We don't know what it does. We do know that it is down. It got shot down. Biden was directly involved, and it is now sitting in the water in some ice. It's hard to tell. It was about the size of a small car. That's all the detail we have. We don't know if it came from China. We don't know if it came from Russia. We don't know if it's a spy. We know it's Russian. No, not quite. I think Fox just threw up the Russian thing before we even knew anything. Like we were just watching Fox News. Fox News just threw up a little and said it's a Russian thing, but that's just because Alaska is close to Russia. I don't think we know specifically that it's Russian. I hope it's not Russian because that's going to start a whole war over there. I don't know if I want that. Fox News reported it's Russian. Buddy, let's slow down with the Fox News reported this. Fox News reported that. Hold on. Let's see if it is Russia, let's just find out. All right. So, U.S. shoots down Alaska. Biden orders U.S. shoots down in full breaking. I think it's still too early to tell. I am not going to say that it's Russia. Not right away. I don't have the confidence that it is Russia. I do know that Alaska is about as close to Russia as it can be, but let's not start getting inflammatory here and start throwing out these things about Russia attacking the U.S. or putting planes in our airspace, because holy shit, that's going to cause an international incident. And we really don't need that right now. Again, if it happened, it happened. And if it's Russia, then, God bless the United States and Godspeed to everybody. But truth here is we just don't know, right? We just don't know. I'm hoping it's not Russian. I'm about 60% sure that I'm 100% sure that it's Russian. 60% of the time, it works every time. Is it Russian? Can I type it in? No, nothing came up. Look, so like I said, Fox News did throw up a thing saying that it was, I think they said Russian Spring. I don't think that's confirmed. I'm not going to throw that out there that it is confirmed, because that is speculative at best. But guys, you have been wonderful. Please, like I said, say something nice to your parents, say something nice to your kids, say something nice to your spouse, your wife, your girlfriend, whoever, your boyfriend, doesn't matter. Be kind, be good to each other. Again, we just watched like some really, really sad topics. So go out, be kind to people, be kind to anybody, do what you got to do. I believe in you. So do it. Now, I am going to go. I'll see you guys next week where we're going to do another roundup. I also plan on coming back sometime in the middle of the week to do some Minecraft. We're going to do some Minecraft and we're going to talk about self-care. I finally found a good way to do it. So we're going to talk about self-care. We're going to talk about it while playing Minecraft. I found a way that's probably going to be a little decent. I'm hoping you guys stick with me for that. But again, that'll be sometime in the middle of the week. All right. Don't believe in yourself. Believe in the version of me that believes in you. I did not take you for a Gurren Lagann fan, man. But hey, you do what you gotta do, all right? But anyways, I will see you guys next time. Thank you for stopping by. Thanks for tuning in.